Okay, well, this is the Common Sense podcast, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Steve, Edge of the Matrix. I know you as, that's how I've seen you. And again, you know, I'm not considering him a Tommy Robinson or the Axley Lennon type character. The Edge of the Matrix is where he's famous on, well, to me, you are, Steve, anyway, right. On YouTube, on Twitter, X.
Yeah, and TikTok.
Oh, that's where I ran into your clips, TikTok.
Yeah.
So I'm buzzing to have you on, mate. I haven't looked forward to a guest. I don't think this much. I've been consuming your content, as well as many others, because, you know, the citizen journalist, in my opinion now, is the best source of news. So thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. Yeah, the citizen journalists are the new paparazzi. The YouTubers, we are bringing to the people, and we're doing the job of what the mainstream media should be doing, but they're not. And we're not putting a slant on it. We're bringing people what's really happening on the streets.
Yeah, and I mean, as I say, if you want to get a feel for, obviously, Steve's stuff, you can go and find him online and get it. Hopefully today we can get to know the man behind it, you know, the motives behind it, because I do think it's an incredibly noble thing that you're doing, not just yourself, you know, your Charlie Veachers and all that. People mightn't necessarily agree with what they're doing, but the way you sharpen and debate and getting discussion going in and around, you know, tricky topics that have been, you know, let's be honest, put under a rug or shoved away in a corner by the mainstream media, by mainstream chat shows, by celebrities. You know, it's a very important thing you're doing. And as I say, you know, getting sourced through on you and assaulted on the streets of this country for saying what you're saying is outrageous. And as I say, mate, you know, one of the key things I seen you was there's no such thing as a transgender child, and keep trans out of women's sports.
Keep men out of women's sports.
Keep men out of women's sports. Okay, well, that's quite commonsensical.
Yeah, and it's amazing how much rage that elicits from a certain type of people that I meet on the streets. I thought they were quite obvious, like you say, common sense things. But people, this certain group of people are living in this echo chamber, and they've been indoctrinated with this ideology over, you know, a long period of time. There's a political strategy called the Long March through the institutions, and it's how do you fundamentally change a society without a blooded revolution? And that's you get this ideology first into the universities, and then those people that graduate from the universities full of these ideas go into the institutions, and then they become like members of the backroom staff, HR, and they draft all the policies. And I saw it in the fire service. I was in the fire service for 20 years. And in the early 2000s, we started to get people, these backroom staff people that had been through the universities, making decisions and writing our HR policies. And that's when I first was awakened, if you like.
Yeah, you're
I nearly said
okay,
woke.
I think we all. But,
that's when I became woke.
No, but I think woke. I think it was a term of you're awake. It's obviously changed a lot in its time since I've heard its first iteration, and I felt it was used quite positively towards people. Maybe it's just my political positions changed, although I don't really think I've changed. I think a lot's changed around me.
Yeah.
You know, I do believe that woke once was positive. I think now it's up for debate what that word actually means. You know, for me, watching the fire brigade go woke would be a worrying thing. You know, if I ever need to ring the fire service because, you know, I'm in a house fire, I would want the best fire person, man or woman, to come and get me out that room. I wouldn't want somebody who's there to fill a quota.
Yeah, well, I can tell you now, you know, without a shadow of a doubt, the fire service is not a meritocracy. Okay, they do not recruit the best people for the job. I saw that firsthand. I was a recruit instructor from around about 2009, 2010. Can't remember exactly, for about 2 or 3 years. And they had quotas to fill. Okay, you don't go from having around about 5 female recruits out of an intake of 40, traditionally over the years, that many, and then the next intake of recruits, you've got 26 females, okay, and then the rest made up of males. What's that? Another 14 males.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just doesn't happen.
I'd hate to be a misogynist here, which is one of the labels I'm currently wearing particularly well nationally.
Yeah.
But I would want a big, hairy ass, 6'6", 6'7", male fireman to come and get me or my kids if I was ever in an unfortunate position like that. And the real life ramifications of this maybe haven't been felt in our country just yet because we don't suffer from catastrophic wildfires like some other parts of the world do. But we've seen this play out in the States when obviously there was a massive fire I think it was in Los Angeles, which had a woke fire chief, and the ramifications of that were deadly. Woke, go broke. It kills. We laugh about it, but if we don't challenge this online safety act we've got now, where we're not allowed to talk about this, going woke can be catastrophic for people's lives. Instead of just going, sorry, we need a big hairy ass meathead fireman, please, to do that, because you've got to smash a wall down and rescue a kid or rescue a woman or pick up a person who's maybe a little bit overweight to get them out of a dangerous situation. Unfortunately, women on the whole aren't strong enough to be able to do what men can do. And that's not a smite on women. They have a higher IQ than men. There's no problem with, it's not a test of intelligence. It's actually a test of pure physical performance.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's on a spectrum and you always get the outliers.
Of course.
And I was in the fire service for 20 years, Great Manchester Fire Service. And out of all the female firefighters that I worked with, I would say maybe one, perhaps two, that I won't name them, but can I name them?
You want to, yeah?
Yeah, because it's a positive. All right. Claire Louth, she was a big, strong woman. She was really good. And I'd happily go into a burning building with her. And we did on occasions. And I'll include Verity as well in that. She was one of the last females that I worked with. But I don't think the rest of them, even though there were men that I would feel uncomfortable going in to the fire service as well, because there were guys there that I don't think were pulling the weight as well. So like I say, it's on a spectrum. But people used to look at me and said, how can he be a firefighter? I'm only 5'4". I couldn't join the fire service when I left school because they said you couldn't do the job. Sorry, not 5'1", 5'5". That inch is important.
Inches are everything, mate.
So what they did is they changed the rules, if you like, and said if you can do the job, you can do the job. So the test remained the same when I came to do my to do the test to get in, and I made sure that I was really fit and really strong throughout my career, including my military career as well.
Now, mate,
yeah, I still do it. I mean, I've got all the skins came off my arms from training yesterday.
You've not been fighting with the transgender community out on the streets of England again, have you?
doing CrossFit workouts and bar muscle ups and things like that.
Yeah, getting attacked for no reason other than a bit of common sense.
Yeah. So I forgot where we were now.
Talking about obviously, when you get into the situation you're in now and the physicality comes your way, do you feel like you can dissolve? Because I see some of the lads now and they've got, like Charlie Veach, you've got karate people and they've got bodyguards and that, and I do worry for you when I see you out there because you're only one fucking dickhead away from coming behind you and scarring you.
Yeah.
Or throwing something hot on you. I've seen them throw hot sauce on you and assault you and grab your camera.
Yeah.
And I fucking really worry for you when you see you out there, mate, because I think what you're doing's noble. And I seen you at the Women's March the other day and you're saying, where are all the fellas?
Yeah, I don't see them. When it comes to my own safety, I think I'm not too worried about it. I don't tend to...
Clearly, you were in the Royal Marine Commandos, was you?
Well, I was a Royal Navy Commando, which is something slightly different. If you want to cover that quickly.
Yeah, we'll get to that. But also I'm saying you're in the fire brigade and you're not just in the fire brigade. You got a silver axe, is that, which was...
Oh yeah,
a big achievement. So, you're not just taking part in the fire brigade.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I when I was on the recruits course, it felt like very similar to the military courses that I used to do, but it wasn't as tough. It was no way near as tough as doing the All Arms Commando course.
Well, this is the big thing with meritocracy, isn't it? Because there's certain grades of our military where no woman has ever. They can take the physical test, but they haven't passed it.
Yeah.
So we can't change the bar. You got to say, look, if you're in that role, fire service, military, certain roles, you need to have passed the bar.
Yeah, of course. I mean, one of the tests that I had to pass when I joined the fire service was the bleep test. You've probably done it as footballers in the past.
Yeah, don't tell me about that.
When I was in the military, I used to hit level 14. The fire service pass mark was 11.4 when I joined, and now it's somewhere, I think it's about 8, level 8. Okay. Oh, no. It's nothing. It's absolutely
level
nothing.
8. You're just getting
just warming up at that point.
Yeah, you would. Yeah. If you couldn't do that, you'd be, seriously fat.
Yeah.
You'd have to be fat.
You're unfit.
Yeah, you're not even level 8. You're not even going 3/4 pace there. It might just be 3/4 pace. Yeah. If you're a bit of a tubster. It will be.
Yeah. And
14's a fucking different world. That's a middle distance run of that.
Yeah. I was in, as I said, I was a Royal Navy Commando. I was a sailor who was assigned to a Commando unit, part of 29 Commando Regiment. It's called 148 Commando Battery. Not a lot of people know about that, but we were it was the stepping stone to Special Forces. Okay. A lot of my friends went on to Special Forces after that. For me, I was happy with that. I was leaving the Navy before I got the shout out because I applied for it. I passed what they call the Acquaint course, which was a 2-week beasting to see if you were good enough to do it.
So how long was you in the Navy for then? Since you left school or something?
I did about a year and a half as an apprentice painter and decorator, and I thought there's got to be more to life. So you grew up in Stockport? Yeah, I grew up in Stockport. Left school with 1 qualification.
Did you love sport, or what was your?
It was all about sport.
Right.
It was literally all about sport, and I wanted to join the Paras or the Marines. I got laughed at by the recruitment. Says you're too small. I was like about 9 stone wet through,
Yeah, must be frustrating for you there.
And I thought I've got all this energy. I want to do it, but then they said you can join the Navy, but you can't join the Marines because you'd never get your Green Beret. You'd never pass. So I joined the Navy, and when I was there, I realised you could do a sideways entry to 148 Battery, but you just had to go on this Acquaint course where they beast you for 2 weeks. And I went along. I think there was only like 5 people on this course, and I was the only one to pass.
Give us an idea of what that course looks like. Give us is it physical, mental?
It's all physical. They thrash you.
Is it like the equivalent of like that BUDS, the Navy SEALs that in America where you see them in and out the water? Because it's obviously water unit, isn't it? You're joining.
Yeah, and I've got a story about in and out of water if you want at the end when I disobeyed orders. But
so you weren't shouting who's going to carry the boats and all that like Goggins and.
No.
But like that mindset of the BUDS, I've seen a lot of that in America.
Yeah.
I know it's Americanized, Steve.
Yeah, well this Acquaint course that to join 148 Battery from the Navy, it's 2 weeks, and they bill it as like, we're going to see if we like you and you see if you like us. But they're there to thrash you. They're there to make you quit. One of the final test is a 15-mile load carry. Not a lot of load, but 15 miles across the Dorset Coastal Pathway. And the lead instructor, his brief is to leave everybody behind. Okay. And it's 15 miles and he's like 3, 2, 1, go. And he's off. And I just stayed behind him and I just focused on his webbing. You have your webbing is like, it's where you have all your pouches, free ammunition and rations if you need to bug out quickly. And I just focused on that, got my head down, go, 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 go. And this guy's 6 foot and I'm 5'5". And I were keeping in step with him, but he was getting further and further away. So then I had to run to keep up with him. And then he'd go further, and I had to run. So it was just that mindset that just keep putting one foot in front of the other, and this will end at some point, but you're not going to quit, because it's to pass the All Arms Commando course, you have to be more mentally tough than you do physically tough. You have to be physically tough, but people break in the mind, and you've just got to keep going. And I just put my head down, and I was the only one that was left with the lead instructor at the end of the 15 miles. And I was the only one to pass the course.
Some going that, mate.
Yeah, and that's just the introduction. And then you get taken to 148 Battery, and then you're not welcomed coming from the Navy. It's weird. It might be similar to a new bloke joining the dressing room in a football club. You've got to prove yourself. And there was many people from the Royal Navy who passed that Acquaint course that went on and failed the All Arms Commando course.
Okay.
So they don't even talk to you, a lot of them. And I was told that I would never pass the Commando course because I'm too small. People my size don't pass generally. You get the odd, we talk about outliers, you get the odd outlier. And when I was told you will not pass, and they laughed at me.
You might as well.
I was like,
just lit a match under you there, haven't they?
Yeah, and that was it.
So do you think that's part of? So obviously the really, intelligent organisations, these who must, if you run any of the psychometric profiling, I've run a little bit of that at clubs. You can figure out quite quickly, or certainly find some shortcuts how to get people ticking and make people work. Obviously with your size, have they known? Right, we just need to say to this little fucker that you can't do something. You can't, and that's. He's away and they get, the ultimately what they want, which is the best soldier, the best, person to carry out, the jobs they need carrying out.
Yeah, I think it is. I think they do that. It is a bit of a psychological trick, and it certainly worked with me.
Well, you want the weak out, don't you? So it's no one can say that out loud anymore because no one's weak. Everyone's got feelings.
Yeah.
No. We need in certain situations like the fire service, like the police force, like the army, like the navy. I think in politics we need it. We need the weak out. You've got to get rid of it in any population. And we've evolved to think we're not animals and we don't act badly. We do. I see it on the street when I watch you. I'm like, my God, these people who are meant to be really inclusive, really, care about everybody's feelings. As soon as they find someone who doesn't agree with them, they turn to very, very dark things really quickly.
Well, it's got all the hallmarks of a cult as well, hasn't it? This gender ideology.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose like the Kardashians are a cult, aren't they? Everything's a cult now, isn't it?
I've never watched social media. But I know.
Do you know what I mean? People like, the rock bands, Oasis are a cult. Liverpool Football Club are a cult. People now get really in love with stuff. To the point where they'll warp reality.
Yeah, well, and they've certainly done that with this agenda.
They do, and it's the rewriting of stuff when I see them go back and they try and change stuff. For me, the big breaking point, I don't know, obviously you've a lot more experience than me, Steve, but was COVID. And it's kind of, I probably still kind of trusted the BBC up until that debacle.
Yeah, I've got a story about that. So I thought I was pretty awake to how the world worked before that. When I joined the fire service, there was a guy I mentioned, he was called Fred O'Brien. He was the senior guy on the watch, and he was kind of like a bit my mentor, if you like, but not so much from a fire service point of view, into schooling me in the way of the way the world actually worked, as opposed to what we were being shown on the BBC. And I'd come from the military. You join the military thinking you're doing the right thing. I left it in 1998. So the first Gulf War had happened. That was George Bush Sr.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
The dad.
That's George Bush Sr.
That was the Iraqis going into Kuwait, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was in the Royal Navy then. I was on HMS Chatham when that happened. I remember we were deployed in the Mediterranean Sea when it came over at the Tannoy, and they told us, and we were listening to bombs going off in Baghdad.
So where did you just move? Did you just get moved into the region then?
Yeah, well, we were part of a NATO fleet, a NATO force called Stan Av Forlant. It was Standing Naval Force Atlantic. Now, I don't know if it's still going on now, if they've still got that, but you get ships working as a task force from all different NATO countries, about 5 or 6 ships together. And we were gutted, actually, because we were kept over this side of the Atlantic in the Mediterranean instead of going over to the States and visiting all these, all the American different places in America or towards the Caribbean. So I was a bit gutted about that.
Yeah, you can see Europe any other time, can't you?
Of course,
see the world that way.
But you had like a United States ship, a Canadian ship, a Dutch ship.
So was this the 90s then? This 90s?
Yeah, this was, it was
1991, was it?
It could have been. It was early 90s because I joined in 1989, did all my training, and then went on to HMS Chatham.
Italia 90 was there. I don't remember there being a war on when Italia 90 was on. Remember the World Cup with Scalacci and all, like Gascoigne and all that? I can't remember because I remember them getting a great welcome home. I don't remember us being in a war mode.
It wasn't then. It was after that. I can't remember the exact year.
Because that was the first time you ran into a kind of dictator in the Middle East, Saddam Hussein. Certainly I did. I'm born 82, Steve. So I know you're a little bit later than me. You look about 85, 86. You're born.
I intentionally look a little bit older than I am wearing all this.
Well, it's all the cosmetic surgery you have to get now to keep looking young for the TV, mate. Seems you to start a TikTok and YouTube. But I remember that conflict, and then quite quickly after that, you had the Balkan conflict. Which did you serve out there?
Yeah. So during the first Gulf War, I was in the Navy, and I actually was due to leave the Navy. I'd put my notice to leave, and you have 18 months notice. That's how long you have to give, because they think you'll change your mind. And I'd already completed the acquaint course for 148 battery, and it's dead man's shoes almost. Somebody leaves and you join. And I thought, I'm never going to get in. And I'd done about a year of my notice, I think. And then I got a phone call. Mick Jepson was the guy who was, the Navy petty officer or chief petty officer at 148 battery. And he said, Steve, you can come and join us now. We've got somebody's just left. And I went, oh, right. And he said, don't sound, so excited about it. And I've got me noticing to leave. I said, let me think about it. And then 5 minutes later, I rung him up and said, Mick, I'm coming. I'll take my notice out, because I've always wanted to do this. So I got into 148 battery, passed the All Arms Commando course, did my parachute course at Bryce Norton, so got my parachute wings. And then it was towards the end of the Balkan conflict in Bosnia. So I never actually faced any active service as in, fighting wars. It's just the way it happened in my career. We were United Nations peacekeeping troops. So I went there. It was, I don't know the exact year. We was over there when Princess Diana died. So that was the year.
Yeah. Was she
97 maybe?
I can remember Diana coming on the news and that, but I can't remember. I can't remember the year that way. Was she 97? Was she Princess?
Yeah, I think it's 96, 97, and we were all. So I went into this country, to Bosnia, in the aftermath of quite a horrific war. If anybody wants to look back at the history of what went on and look up what happened at Srebrenica,
wasn't it?
The ethnic cleansing, it was quite. It was weird because I was still only young. I was in my mid to late 20s. And being 148 battery, we were attached to a Canadian group called Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry. And there was a group of, I think there was 4 or 6 of us, I can't remember now. And we were in the north of the country in a place called Dravar, named after Tito. It was called Tito or Titov Dravar. Tito was the leader. He was like a fascist leader of Yugoslavia. And right up on the hills, there was a forest which was the trees had been planted to spell out his name on the hills. And what they'd done is they'd put landmines around the trees to stop people going chopping them down. And the landmines were starting to corrode and poison the tree roots, so the trees were dying off. So there's a bit of, sweet justice there in the end. Yeah. But we were allowed to just go and travel around the country on our own in Land Rovers. And we used to come up to little villages and towns which had been pillaged. And towards the end of that war, I think the Serbians did a massive push with the backing of NATO, which meant the Croatians had to flee. And a lot of them got caught and massacred at Srebrenica. But we were walking through people's homes because it was, you can imagine if you've had a burglary in a house and everything's been turned upside down, it was like that, but we were walking through a ghost town and it was spooky. And I thought, this was just a few thousand miles back from the UK, where everybody was watching Simon Cowell's, what was his talent show, X Factor and all that lot. And I was looking at all these,
we just had that kind of cool Britannia period, hadn't the late 90s was a cool period, wasn't it? Into the early 2000s. Yeah. Did he get in about, when did Diana die? Was she 90? I thought she was a bit earlier, 90.
We'd have to check that. I thought it was 97.
When did Diana die? I thought she was earlier than.
Right. I know it was definitely when I was out there.
I remember the Balkan conflict because Yugoslavia were meant to play in the European Championships in, was it 1992 in Sweden? And Denmark took the place. Diana died 97. Denmark took the place because there was a problem in Yugoslavia. And I remember
they won. Did they win that?
Denmark won it, Peter Schmeichel was in goal.
Yeah.
But they didn't qualify for the tournament. They only got in because of Yugoslavia's involvement in the war. And obviously, following kind of being footy mad, you track the football teams and the football players as opposed to the politics.
Yeah.
And then, that war for me was certainly the first time I'd ever seen football and politics intermingled.
Yeah.
The resistance in many, many ways, and the war was kind of amplified by what was happening on the terraces, because it was the only place people could go to protest against what was happening via the state.
Yeah.
So for me then, you're 10 years of age and you're like, wow, this is, I'd seen Hillsborough in 89, so you're kind of seeing the state's modus operandi in this country, and then obviously seeing it in other countries, and then pretty much all you can remember, Steve, after that is war after war after war.
I think we're paying the price for that now.
Oh yeah, well, wars are very expensive, aren't they? Someone's got to pay for them, and it's never the people right there and then, it's future generations.
Yeah, I mean, it radicalised a whole generation. And you see, what I've come to realise is that because while I was in the fire service, I went to Open University to study, because of things that I'd seen in Bosnia, and I wanted to know how the world worked, and I wanted to know why these things were happening. So I studied international relations. And you come to realise that although the world is divided into nation states that have sovereignty, and within international relations, sovereignty of a country means you can do what you want within those borders and nobody else can tell you what to do. And each country doesn't recognise another country as a higher authority. And you each recognise each other's country's right to exist. So I've lost my track of thought a little bit.
About sovereignty.
Yeah, about sovereignty. And so what I realised is there's a higher level of power above the nation state. So you've got the people that control the banking systems, you've got the people that control the military industrial complex. The term's been called the owners and controllers of the global financialized capital, and they just exploit countries. They've exploited the United States economy and the United States military power, as well as Britain's military power, and it's not the people of the country wanting the war, it's these people that are making profit out of these industrial complexes that want the war, but then they also control the media, so they can convince the people of those countries to go out and actually fight the wars. So when the first Gulf War happened, when we started bombing the Middle East, and then you had 9/11, and then you had the Iraq invasion after that in 2003, all these military industrial complexes, it was that which was pushing for these wars, but it's the people now of the country that are paying the price of that, because they radicalized a generation of people from the Middle East to hate us and to come over here. And I mean, Stephen Yaxley Lennon, Tommy Robinson, he saw that in Luton. What I wouldn't say he got radicalized. What made him stand up and do what he's doing is he saw the soldiers coming home from these conflicts, walking through Luton, and then the radicalized Islamists in Luton were spitting and throwing things at the soldiers coming back.
Yeah, which is a national disgrace. You couldn't imagine that in any self-respecting country. You go and risk your life for the country to defend the country's sovereignty, and you come back and you're attacked by the people or people who have a similar ideology to the ones you've just been fighting for your country's sovereignty. So it's insanity, Steve, when you listen to it.
Yes.
And if you address this or try to talk about this now online or get a discussion going or a debate going about this, then you're either shut down or threatened with legal ramifications. Yeah, and you're right. And like we said earlier off camera, we felt the political landscape shift around us. I've been a working class, paid my union dues, considered myself, centre left, or left of centre, and now I've been considered a right wing Nazi fascist. Yeah, and I would consider myself the same. I wouldn't say I've never been. Because the area I grew up in, where everybody is just pretty much Labour. Do you know what I mean? There has been a bit of a rebellion. There was a bit of a reform movement. That you'll get the Green Party, the Lib Dems, but it'll never be Tory where I'm from. They've certainly outstayed the welcome with the people of that community. But then people who just blindly vote Labour, and I think they're all as bad as each other. I think, when you hear Donald Trump in America talk about draining the swamp and the swamp, I'm not necessarily saying they're bad people, because I have been in the House of Parliament and the House of Lords, and I've met some of these people, and I do think they have good intentions. But I just think in order to keep power or to keep in with the status quo, I think they have to sell the soul.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there's a little black book on a lot of these people somewhere.
People are keeping the receipts of some great people. Charlotte Gill's one of them, isn't she? Or there's people out there keeping the people's voting. They say one thing online, but then the voting in the chamber shows it's completely different.
I mean, the politicians, it's quite obvious, and we saw this during COVID time. They are literally the puppets, and they're being told what to do by this higher power that I've been speaking about.
Yeah, so in America they call this the deep state. In the UK, do we refer to it as the civil service?
You've got the civil service, and you can look in. You can do some digging on some of the people that are in the civil service that are pulling the strings. But if we can take it, I mean, COVID, they wanted a great reset, but they got a great awakening, I think.
Oh yeah, I think they overstepped the boundaries and they switched a lot of people on who, certainly me. For instance, I didn't think they were capable of what I now think they're capable of.
Right, I'll go into a little bit what I know about the deep state and the origins of it then. So when you start talking about the New World Order, people instantly go bang, conspiracy theorists, tinfoil hat and all this. But the world has always been ordered in a certain way. So I talked about about sovereignty in the nation state. What's considered the birthplace or the birthing time of the current nation state was 1648, and that was after the 30 Years' War in Europe, and they signed something called the Peace of Westphalia. Okay, and that is where each nation state recognised each other's right to exist in the world.
Westphalia, that's Dortmund, isn't it? Isn't it? That's where. Yeah, that's where that region is.
It was in Europe. Yeah.
Yeah, Germany. Yeah, modern day Germany, kind of Dortmund region.
Yeah, so the world's been ordered since then in this internationally as the nation state system. Okay, it's built, and we recognise each other's countries' rights to exist and do what they like in their borders. Now, World War I came along, okay, and at the end of World War I, they signed the Treaty of Versailles, and they tried to implement what was called the League of Nations. I don't know if you remember or know of that.
I'm a big war buff.
Right, okay. Yeah. So Woodrow Wilson was the president of the United States at the time, and he had a guy from the banking cartel called, I think it was Mandel House was his second name, might have been Edward Mandel House. He was basically the money men from the United States at that time who were trying to implement the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve Act came in 1913 after a secret meeting in Jekyll Island with all these banking cartels in 1910. What they tried to do is these same people tried to implement the League of Nations, which was the first attempt at a one world government. But it couldn't get passed through Congress in the United States. They were fiercely independent.
Yeah.
So they went back to the drawing board, and 20 years later, World War II came along. Even before, towards the end of World War II, these men were drawing up plans for the New World Order in a place called Bretton Woods in America. Is it in Hampshire? I'm not quite sure what state it's in. But what they did is they brought into being the Bretton Woods Institutes, all right? And this is the United Nations, the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and the precursor to the World Trade Organization, which was GATT, the General Agreement on Trades and Tariffs. So I'm going to get to a point here because this ties in with COVID, how I knew who were behind implementing the COVID policies. So what they did is that the world was changing. They wanted a one world government. How do you keep the poorer countries, in debt? We talked about not yet, but we remember, Feed the World, Bob Geldof, Mid-Jaw and all that kind of
Live
stuff,
Aid.
all the Live Aid stuff, because all these African countries were in debt. The Bretton Woods institutes were keeping them in debt. The International Monetary Fund, the World Bank. So corrupt leaders of that country needs to build infrastructure, say for the country, new roads or whatever. So the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank will then give them a loan. In turn, for that loan, they have to employ all the companies from the West, usually the United States, to build that infrastructure. But the country had to sign up to structural adjustment programs, SAPs. And that meant that they had to sell off all their national industries. They gave them really high interest rates on those loans, and they weren't allowed to invest money into education for those countries, or very little into healthcare, because they didn't want an educated, fit population. They wanted to keep them oppressed. And these were structural adjustment programs where it would keep the West rich, but these countries would never get out of debt, and they'd always stay in poverty.
But the Chinese have done a kind of Belt and Road program in Africa since, haven't they, where they've improved infrastructure in some countries for some of the resources as well. And I think the Russians were mixing around in there. But obviously, you're saying in the outbreak of the Second World War, the response to that has been to take and basically pillage the resources of Africa.
Yeah, absolutely. And to keep all those countries, in debt and in poverty. But not just that, it's all other countries as well, poorer countries in Europe. Now, come the COVID time, when everybody was confused, what the hell's going on? How come all these countries all around the world are singing from the same hymn sheet and implementing the same policies? And then I saw an article online, it was, from the president of Belarus called Alexander Lukashenko.
He's got a nice mustache like me, Steve.
Yeah. And he said, my country had applied for a loan from the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, and I was offered 5 times the amount of money that I initially asked for, as long as I adopted the same policies, the same COVID policies as Italy. And remember, Italy was the main focus in Europe at the time.
Yeah, it was scary, wasn't it, Italy? Yeah.
So that was the penny drop moment from me. It was the same situation as the SAPs, the structural adjustment programs. You get a loan from the International Monetary Fund, from the World Bank, and you have to sign up to a certain set of
it's like what loan sharks or gangsters would have done years ago, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? But it's just white collar gangsters.
Yeah. So I realised it was all coordinated through that. And then when you start digging a bit deeper and you look into the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab, who was the founder of that.
Is Schwab the guy, or is it Soros? One of them was working for the Nazis as a kid.
I think Schwab's father had links with.
I'm pretty sure one of them. Just check that for me, Noah.
Yeah.
One of them was. Do you know when the Nazis in obviously 38 onwards were kind of moving through part of Europe? I want to say Hungary. They obviously were using kids to, like what Orwell spoke about. Tell tales on the adults, tell them, and this kid would infiltrate a family, find out where Jews were, and then go back and tell the Nazis, and he'd get rewarded for it. So I'm pretty sure it was Schwab.
Oh, was it? Was he one of the? Yeah, possibly.
It could have been Soros. It's one of those two.
So George Soros is
Hungarian.
His charity or foundation is the Open Society Foundation, and he is funding a lot of this LGBTQ, particularly the trans stuff, in universities.
So I have to apologise to Steve here, because before we spoke on camera, he also blamed me for starting the Rainbow Laces campaign.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is stopped now. Have you seen it?
Yes, I saw it. Yeah. The Premier League has moved out.
Which
of the
I'm
way,
relieved about, so I can settle down, because obviously I was with Stonewall, who I thought were a reputable charity who wanted to do good in the world to help people have a better life. And then Paddy Power, which is weird actually that it would be them too and me. So that's the holy trinity on the Rainbow Laces. And at the time it was just LGBT.
Yeah.
There was nothing else added onto that. And it was about if there was gay men in professional football, which we all knew there must be, just law of averages, that no one was really asked anymore. No one cared. You know, just don't be trying to fucking suck people off in the fucking showers or do any gay stuff, and there'll be no problem. Which no football playing fella who'd survived in that world and became a professional would do anyway. But it was the tea thing that at the time it was still, all right, I'd seen them as a kid. You know, when growing up as a kid, you'd go, look at that fucking weirdo fella dressed as a woman in fucking stockings and suspenders in the middle of the town centre with a pair of fake tits or a pair of balloons pretending that, you know, you'd go, oh, poor bastard, like he's not well. I did never think that type of man would be able to box in the Women's Olympics and win a gold medal, or go in the changing room and get changed next to my wife, my mother, any of my aunties and my daughters, you know, and you'd be a weirdo for saying, what the fuck's he doing here?
Yeah. Okay, so I'll take you back to Stonewall first and then we'll go along that. So have you heard the theory of the St. George in retirement syndrome? Have you heard of that one? I actually read it from a book by Douglas Murray, The Madness of Crowds. It's a really good book on this.
I like Douglas, yeah.
Yeah, and to summarise, basically you've got St. George who wants to fight the good fight and slay the dragon. So Stonewall, civil rights movement, fighting for gay rights. Okay, and they basically achieved their goal. St. George slayed the dragon, fought the good fight and won.
Brilliant, yeah.
That all of a sudden, he's got nothing to do. So Stonewall, they'd fought the good fight. They were being funded by all these big foundations, you know, George Soros, like the Open Society, everything.
They were a cool brand.
Yeah, they were. So they needed another cause.
Another dragon.
So, yeah, another dragon to slay. But the St. Georgian retirement syndrome goes that he'll find a smaller dragon and he'll slay that. And then once that's done, he'll find another dragon and slay that. And it's increasingly smaller and smaller calls until eventually he's waving his sword around in fresh air and not, you know, he's got no fight to fight. But Stonewall had slayed the dragon, fought the good fight, and then they needed to keep the funding going. And they jumped on the T bandwagon. Okay.
Well, yeah. And whatever's come after that.
The T, the Q.
There's an I in there.
Yeah, so the T was for transgender. The Q, they've changed the meaning. It was either queer or questioning. It was originally queer. The I was for intersex. They brought intersex into it. And then there was the plus. In Canada, there was some two-spirit thing, you know, but then the plus, what the hell does the plus mean? That can basically mean anything else, any other cause. Yeah,
so, like, we had an epidemic, not in this country, I don't think, but we did have an epidemic break out in North America of people identifying as fairies and asking to go to the toilet in kitty litters in school.
Yeah.
So they were putting kitty litters in. At what point do people with common sense say, we're not helping these people by allowing this distortion of reality? And that's one of the points that really resonated when I heard you speak, and the way you handle people, I think, is exemplary, and you should be incredibly proud of yourself, certainly in the face of such provocation. But the way you dispense wisdom. You can see people. I thought there was a great moment in one of your videos where a guy clearly had a daughter who was thinking she was a boy, and a mother and the father, quite cool looking older bloke with an umbrella, and he stood and waited patiently.
Yeah.
And then the way you spoke to them, you could see the penny going away with them. And no disrespect to them, I don't know them, but I was looking at the mum and dad thinking, this looks like you've got a fucking lot to be responsible for here by not giving this kid other options.
Yeah, they do need a little bit of pushback, but what's happening is a child is going online, maybe they don't fit in, okay, maybe they've suffered some other traumas.
That's fucking all children, isn't it? It's all children, really. Yeah.
And they're going online and they're seeing these trans influencers whose life appears to be fantastic. You know, they're going, it was Tumblr originally.
Well, I was laughing today because I was going to show the lads for one of our other shows, the Dylan Mulvaney, you know, the guy who's became quite popular as a woman, the Bud Light. And if you've actually watched the advert, it's like, yeah, obviously 1.7 billion was going to be wiped off the share price. Like it's American beer advert. It's like, you know, a man in a bath doing weird stuff. But the absurdity of the world at that point was that wasn't, you know, people put that out and was like, this is going to be brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like the go woke, go broke, isn't it? And it's
Jaguar last week gone, CEO gone.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I actually think, I think we're both fight fans, and I watch a lot of UFC. Dana White, he was, the president of the UFC. He still employs Bud Light as a sponsor, I think, which is weird because that's probably one of the most, I was going to say most extreme macho kind of sports you can do, but let's face it, there's some women that are hard as nails that are fighting in the UFC as well.
Yeah, incredibly tough women. I mean, I'm not... I like Katie Taylor in the boxing, but I like the way she conducts herself. But I really don't like her seeing her get punched in the face.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what it is about when a man gets punched in the face. It doesn't quite have the same... I don't know whether that's something that's just in you. Do you know what I mean? But I don't enjoy seeing women fighting. The MMA is a little bit different because they can end up on the ground. It ends up a little bit technical, but I don't really like... but then some of the best fights you've seen where they've gone toe-to-toe have been women's boxing fights. Katie and Amanda Soriano's been some great fights. And if you're over 18 and you want to have a punch-up, who am I or who are we to say, no, you can't do that?
Yeah, I remember when women's boxing, I'm old enough to remember when women's boxing came into the UK for the first time, and I think the lady that was fighting was a Scouser as well, Jane Couch.
No, she's actually from Fleetwood, where a coach.
Right.
She lives in Bristol, Jane. Shout out to Jane, and I've met her a few times. Because I managed in Bristol, but I was obviously working in Fleetwood before that, and she's from Fleetwood, but lives in Bristol. Right. So I've met her a few times. She's come in the dressing room and stuff like that, and she's an incredible person. I mean, really pioneering in women's boxing and combat sports in the UK.
Yeah.
But for me, I still. That is a small percentage of women who are, that mindset, to get into that space and do that. Jane is, as I say, a warrior. You're talking about the girls you've met and the ladies you've met in the fire service and the military, no doubt, who have that spirit. But again, that doesn't mean we should drop thresholds or merit-based positions to get those people in. It should be, look, if you can raise the bar, which you did in your military career, you can raise the bar as a 5'5" and a half, 5'5" and a half.
I might have that half actually. Yeah.
Then obviously you can still break boundaries and break down barriers. But again, things should be hard for a reason.
Yeah, and everything should be a meritocracy. So going back to what you said when I'm out on the streets and things.
Yeah.
I feel now that my calmness, and I wasn't always calm, and I'm still not in certain situations, but the people that want to come and oppose me are masters at what they do. They're masters at provoking people, and I see it on demonstrations all the time now, going into Manchester following these. That they will come and they will try and intimidate you, but they will do just enough so that they're not going to get picked up by the police.
Okay.
But when if you snap and push them, they will instantly play the victim and overplay it. And for me,
I know about that, mate.
Yeah, I think they're the worst kind of people, and I'm faced with those all the time. But so I think I'm the ideal person to do this, the ideal candidate, because I'm small, nobody is intimidated by me. So they can come and think that they can push me around. Now, they don't intimidate me one little bit. So there's no fear there. There's no fear. And you can see that when you're there on the streets. But you need to arm yourself with the knowledge as well. And the thing is, what I didn't realise when I went out, every single person that comes along and challenges me, they're either not that well versed, but if they are, then they're all reading from the same script. I get the same questions and the same answers every single time.
Yeah. They go down the same rabbit hole. Yeah. And obviously, when the way you deal with them, you can see with some of them, and then they get offensive to you because they're trying to get away, because you can see them thinking, oh, fuck, I'm over my head here. I'm playing against a chess grandmaster, and I only have got, a snippet of this virtue signaling position I've taken up here is going to be exposed, and they know... they're going to be on the internet looking a right back.
Well, absolutely. So we were talking about combat sports and women in combat sports. So one of the main examples I use how this ideology is harmful, allowing men into women's sports, is the MMA fighter who called himself Fallon Fox. He's his original name was Boyd Burton. He was in the United States Navy, possibly the Marines. I'm not sure. It might be just the Navy. And he left, called himself Fallon Fox. Fair play to the guy. He went the whole hog and got a set of prosthetic breasts and had his tackle cut off.
Had the hog off.
And then entered mixed martial arts. Now, he wasn't the best fighter, but he was a man fighting women, right? And he had a famous bout with a lady called Tamika Brents, who was an outlier, a real strong butch woman, a proper fighter. And she said after the fight, she said, I've never felt power like that in the ring. She didn't know she was fighting a man. And Fallon Fox, Boyd Burton, in that fight, kneed her in the head, broke the orbital bone of her skull, sparked her out.
Could have killed her.
Yeah, that is a man fighting a woman. Now, I use this example of harms being caused when I'm out on the street. And if the person that is bought into this ideology, they will never condemn it. They will say, it's always the same answer, well, they're going into a fighting sport, men break men's bones in that, they know what they're letting themselves in for. And I must say, well, no, they didn't know that they didn't know it was a man with all the physical advantages.
If they want to, and there's that many of them, let's put a transgender category and they can all have a scrap in there. Otherwise, I say, look, unfortunately, they've got to use the male toilets. There's a disabled toilet there. So I've said, well, clearly got some kind of mental disability. Maybe they use that, but they can't use the women's. Yeah. So there's two options of toilet. And people go, well, hang on a second, the disabled people are going to be disadvantaged because now you've got, some of these, men who have thinking difficulties are in the wrong spot. So unfortunately, because there is some men out there, and there mightn't be in every single transgender person. None of us, I don't think you're suggesting that, I'm certainly not. But clearly there is some, as we've seen in the women's prisons, as we've seen in other social situations, who can use loopholes or grey areas in the law
100%
to take advantage and make it really difficult for some women. And that's why I didn't get, when I seen the march, and you obviously got yourself to the front of the march, I was loving watching you, how you got set up. I'm like, fucking hell, you've thought of every angle. And when they surround you, and obviously the copper in there, and I thought to myself, how can they look at what you're saying as women and violently disagree with you? It's bizarre.
It was crazy. It was one of the craziest days I've had just this Saturday just gone. I thought I would be going into Manchester with my boards to do my usual talking and conversations with people, and then I'd go and join this women's rights march with my board, which said keep men out of women's sports. So I thought I'd be making allies. It was this particular group of women's... I think they call them liberal feminists, okay?
Cat ladies.
When they say women, they were including, in their words, all women in that, which means trans women. So for those that don't know, they flipped the language. A trans woman is a man. Their slogan will be trans women are women, trans women are women. So a trans woman is a man. Substitute the word trans with the word pretend, and then it'll click.
Yeah.
Okay. So I joined this march, and it said keep men out of women's sports, and they were trying to jostle me out of the way, hit me on the head with the flags because they were shouting trans women are women. This was a women's rights march,
as well as shouting free Palestine.
Free Palestine.
So that was what confused me about them, Steve. I'm going, well, what are you actually out here marching for? How was women's rights being conflated with a war in a far-flung part of the world? It's bizarre.
And the weird thing is, if any trans person went to a Muslim country, or any gay person, they'd get thrown off the top of a building.
This is the thing, you're going, have you not, when you're just sitting and having, your coffee breaks and you're just talking about, right, we're going to go out Saturday, we're going to go out Sunday, and we're going to make these banners. Have they not thought about, okay, let's just run this extension of, we have an Islamic takeover of the UK. How long do you think trans rights are going to last?
Yeah.
Well, just go to Syria and have a look if they want. Go to any country where that's actually happened. And there's lots of data points to show you not very long.
No.
As well as women's rights then. Yeah, not very long. They go after that. And as I say, from your perspective, having the career you've had, developing the experience base you've had, there must be times when you're staring into this bile coming back at you thinking, why do we do this? What do we do it for?
Yeah.
Spitting at you, you know, getting violent with you, pouring shit on you. And ultimately, when you talk to them, all you're ever doing is it's like somebody trying to educate somebody, and yet they just don't want to listen. They just want to offend you or violently assault you.
Yeah, they bought into the ideology. I mean, I'm becoming an expert at getting covered in food products. So I've got 2 court cases pending, one for Liverpool, one for Brighton, possibly in Chester if I pursue it. So I got covered in hot chili sauce down here on Bold Street, just down the road.
Yeah.
That was the first attack that I had. And I also got smacked in the face during that. I've not released that video yet. That's going to come out soon. The police advised me not to release it until it's been through court.
This is the thing for me, mate. I do worry about you out there. And I know you can take care of yourself, no problem at all. But if that chili sauce is acid...
Yeah.
Which it could easily fucking be. You don't know when you see it coming towards you, and, you know, you're blind or whatever it is, or that punch in the face has got a razor blade on their hand next minute.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the insanity of, you know, that when these people are backed into a corner where they have nowhere else to run because they're hit with, you know, the data reality.
Yeah.
That they resort to what they resort to. You know, for me, a big thing was when, and I'd love you to explain this for my viewers, about the difference, because a big tipping point for me in the UK was when, obviously, I'm watching the Olympics, which as a kid, you know, you grow up getting interested in all kinds of sports that you've never seen before. But obviously there's other sports that you do like that you want to see. And then you're watching the women's boxing, which you're like, okay, and you're watching a guy, you know, just jab everybody's nut off. And there was the thing with an Italian girl, and I'm, you know, father of a daughter, and I go, if my daughter's trained her whole life to get to the Olympics to represent a country in Italy, and then a disgruntled male for some mad woke ideology is now punching her repeatedly in the face. You know, you've seen the girl get hit in the face. It was a power she'd never felt before, and she instantly lost, you know, all fighting instincts because at that point her life's in danger. And then to see the same person rewarded and celebrated, and I'm like, that's a man. But we weren't allowed to say that for fear of, you know, the government, the state, you know, arresting us and rounding us up.
Yeah, so this is the case of Imane Khalif in the Paris Olympics. Right. Yeah, I've looked into this. It took me, when I first started my campaign, I didn't know enough about the Imane Khalif story to be able to comment on it. So I didn't. I waited until it all came out. So for the record, Imane Khalif never identified as being transgender. Always identified as a female from birth. Now, Imane Khalif, as well as the Olympic runner that was South African that was in the 2012 Olympics in London, was born with a disorder of sexual development.
Caster Semenya.
Yeah. So when we said this LGBTQI, that's the intersex. Okay, that's an old term. They call it disorders of sexual development now. And what the trans rights activists are doing is using the fact that there's a very small percentage of people born with these disorders, okay, where they have some kind of chromosomal deficiency.
Yeah, but isn't that what Charles Darwin wrote about, you know, years and years ago? This is what happens to species as time. You know, people are born with slightly different variants of previous genetic.
Is it? Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I didn't look
that
into
was
that.
The finches, wasn't it? Where they all had the different type of beak.
Oh yeah, and the
some
beaks
were more
started going
suited
longer.
to some surroundings, obviously.
Yeah.
You know, not but like exacerbate that out. You know, you're a copy of your mum and dad in some form or fashion, and vice versa. You know, you're not just someone you downloaded the file off the internet and that's made you. You know, you are hundreds, if not hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of generations of genetic code.
Well, this is a kind of like a bit of a genetic deficiency. So the trans rights activists will use intersex to say that there's more than two sexes. Yeah. Okay. Or more than, gender's a social construct. Or that's what they say. We'll go on to that in a bit. But there's about 40 different disorders of sexual development. Now, Imane Khalif and Caster Semenya had a condition called 5-ARD, 5-alpha reductose deficiency. So when the baby's in urethro, so in the womb, they get a rush of something called dihydrotestosterone, which forms the male genitalia. Now, if that doesn't happen because of this enzyme deficiency, then the baby is born with ambiguous or predominantly female-looking genitalia. So they'll say, oh, we've got a girl. And this is quite common in certain areas of the world. Although it's still very rare as a whole, they can locate certain areas where it happens. So they'll bring up the child as a baby, but what they don't realise is they have internal male reproductive systems. So they'll have testes inside the stomach.
So they don't have a uterus or
No,
what women would have, but they have obviously male parts.
They might have like ambiguous genitalia, like an oversized clitoris or a micro penis.
All right.
Or sometimes I've read that the testes are hidden in the labial lips. Okay, come puberty, they get the natural rush of testosterone, so the body develops like a male. Now, in a lot of situations, that they then stop seeing this child as a female and they go on to live as a male.
Is this the kind of bearded lady of yesteryear and all that?
Yeah, I'd imagine so. Yeah.
Must have been.
Yeah, it must. Yeah, but within these areas where it's more common in the world, they actually target these people to become athletes so that they do well.
Okay, you can see the physiological advantage of testosterone.
Yeah. So Imane Khalif, the boxer, never identified as being transgender. However, genetically, he's a male.
Yeah.
Caster Semenya is still living as a female. So here's the funny thing. Caster Semenya got the silver medal in the 800 metres. I believe this is correct. In 2012 Olympics. The winner was a Russian lady, can't remember her name, but she got the gold. It turns out that she was taking performance-enhancing drugs. So they stripped this lady of the gold medal and gave it to Caster Semenya, who's a man.
Yeah. Well, you had the thing with Riley Gaines as well. I was going to say, is this there's a great documentary on Netflix called Icarus.
Right, I've not seen that.
Oh, you got to go and see it, Steve. It's the guy who, he's on a program to get himself in great shape as a cyclist, and he goes, right, I'm Lance Armstrong, etc. I'm going to take all the gear and I'm going to see what I can do. And on the journey, he meets some mad Russian scientist who helps him. And then he ends up defecting to the US, and he's the one who blows the whistle on them drilling through the wall and taking the samples that she's probably been in the group of. Yeah. So they were juiced up to the gills at Sochi and all the Olympics.
Yeah.
And what they were doing is, after they'd done a sample, they drilled through another wall and could take the samples out. They devised a way of taking the lids off without breaking a seal. Putin and his firm, and basically just doctored all the samples of the Russian athletes.
Right, wow.
So basically, this fella exposes it.
Yeah.
On the midst of a journey, he doesn't end up doing what he was doing, and he ends up having to get this guy under witness protection into the States. It's called Icarus. It's a fascinating documentary. If you're an athlete and you're into your training, but
might check that out.
And she'll have been upgraded in the midst of probably the skullduggery that goes on. And I do remember, I didn't see this. You might have seen this live, but I do remember at certain Olympic Games. Doesn't one of the women's for 200 meters, Florence Griffith-Joyner, still hold one of the records or something like that? And obviously from the Ben Johnson Olympics, or where they were, looked like they were all having a go of some multivitamins. And then you're seeing the stuff about, the East German and the Chinese and Russian people who had started, programs as gymnastics or weightlifters as women, and then had beards and that later on in Germany because of the steroids or whatever they've been given on the protocols.
Yeah, of course. Sharon Davis talks a lot about that. Now, Sharon Davis should have been a gold medalist. I think, was it in 1980? I think it was the Olympics in Germany then. And there was a doping program for the East German women. And these young athletes didn't even know that they were being doped. They were given stuff by the trainers.
Yeah.
You know, I think they might have gone on to basically sue them, you know, in later years.
Yeah, they did, because they couldn't get pregnant and stuff like that. There was a lot of information that came out about them later on, but it was kind of put down to, you know, the Stasi, it's a bit mad, aren't they, behind the iron curtain.
Yeah.
You know, never thinking our governments would do stuff like that. You know, you're talking about Sharon Davis there, who's been a huge champion for keeping men out of women's sports. You know, Riley Gaines, the same in the States, who I think has been admirable in terms of the position she's taken in the face of extreme provocation. You know, the stance that people are taking now, yourself being one of them, I think is, you know, we're in an age where, unfortunately, mainstream media has let us down, you know, consistently over a long period. And, you know, thankfully the people have, you know, the light's gone on for a lot of people, and they've started to, you know, seek alternative media. Yeah,
people are turning away from mainstream media in the droves. I got rid of my TV license round about the start of the COVID time. You know, I'd had enough of being, you know, fed absolute bullshit from the BBC. I put that money into YouTube Premium so that I don't have to watch adverts on YouTube. But people are seeing that, and they're turning to YouTubers like myself, like the Charlie Veach, Billy Moore, you know, he's a man of the people from Liverpool, all the other YouTubers around Manchester. They're doing the work of what the mainstream media should have done.
So I think the name for me is great, because our first podcast series I did a long time ago before I went into management was called The Edge. Right. Because I wanted to be at the edge to fin it. And when I seen yours, Edge of the Matrix, obviously it's a striking name. You know, where did that come from, and what's it mean to you?
It was weird. I used to follow, actually, a left-wing blogger called Caitlin Johnson.
What are you going to say, Caitlyn Jenner there?
No, we can talk about him. I've got a good story about him, what people don't know. Bruce Jenner, yeah. And she used to write a blog called Thoughts from the Edge of the Narrative Matrix. And I basically just shortened that down, basically. So that was originally the name, but it worked as well because, you know, it seems like we are being sucked into this matrix, into this online transhumanism kind of thing, and where I feel like I'm sat on the edge of it, not wanting to get dragged in.
Yeah. There was I've got it on my phone here. There's a little clip I put into these today. Did you see it, where the fella walks the goat around the fire? He's got a herd of goats and he walks them in, and there's a fire bin in the middle, and he walks them round, and he says after 2 times of taking them round, then the front one starts to cat. And then they just all, he walks away and they're just all chasing each other around.
Just keep doing it, yeah.
Because the herd is where people feel protected. Now for me, and this will obviously apply to you, because of the way I've behaved in the past or stuff that's happened to me on my life journey, I've been kicked out the herd, and you stand alone and you go, and then you look at it and you go, who wants to be with them fucking lunatics?
No, brilliant.
This position here, you know, not saying that you want to be there forever, because you've got to go back in and ultimately, you know, try and be a herd animal and help the herd help itself, which is what I see yous doing. You know, at the minute, you know, there's a lot of flack coming your way, and, you know, I certainly know what that feels like, but also, you know, there must be a lot of positivity and a lot of love coming your way.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm meeting some great people. People are just appearing now, and I'm, as well as going out on the streets, I'm going to be doing interviews a bit like this with people, detransitioners. I'm going to, there's an organisation called GenSpect. I don't know if you're aware of them.
I've heard you talk about them. Yeah, I've heard you talk about them.
Run by a lady called Stella O'Malley, an Irish lady who's a psychotherapist. And that organisation looks at non-medicalized interventions to young people that are suffering from gender distress. Yeah. Okay, rather than this affirmation pathway where they're brought in, and if you don't subscribe to the social stereotypes of what's a boy or what's a girl, you're told that you're born in the wrong body, and they put you down this pathway of first puberty blockers, which are really chemical castration drugs. They use them to castrate sex offenders in America.
Yeah, was this Lupron I've heard you talk about?
Lupron is one of them. Yeah, Lupron. That's it's kind of like shelf.
So
name.
this is given to, up until the CAS reports, this is given to single-digit kids. Yeah, like 8-year-old, 9-year-old kids. Or what age did they start this process? Before, obviously, the Tavistock clinic's been closed or stopped from doing stuff like this now?
Yeah, it was prepubescent children that they were giving it to. But they say it's puberty blockers. What it actually does, it stops the pituitary gland stimulates hormone production and produces testosterone. When they're given that, it does a rush of that and then it stops it. So it stops children developing into adults. Now, what the trans rights activists will say is, oh, it's just a pause on your puberty. Okay, so it gives the child time to think. But from the records, virtually every single child that went onto the puberty blockers went on to take the opposite sex hormones. So a boy would then go on to be given estrogen and a girl would have been given testosterone. So what that then did, the puberty blockers stopped the development of the child. So they now have osteoporosis, reduced cognitive
osteoporosis for
brittle bones.
Yeah. Well, listen, you working class audience here, Stephen, or you're educated man, but
and basically, if a young girl's been given testosterone and put on puberty blockers, they go into the menopause really early, and then they end up having to have a hysterectomy. Young pubescent kids that have never had an orgasm will be stopped from ever experiencing that for the rest of their life. And then if it went even further, they would go on to have surgery.
So it almost feels like it's a methodology to just stop people breeding, to like nullify people, like to make them almost like an avatar, like a Ken doll, that the sexual urge is just completely obsolete.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
there's no drive to have children. There's no drive to have them chemicals are all switched off that make you human. Yeah.
I think it kind of like messes with some people as well, and it affects, their temperament, because a lot of them that are on these opposite sex hormones are the ones that I face in the street, and I get a fierce response.
You can imagine though, because imagine as a parent, right? Like, you think you've cracked it, you've got a kid, and all of a sudden you're going to make this perfect person. You see mums and dads chasing the kids around, dance theatres and sports fields and living their life through the children. And then you've got these people who are coming out of, you talked about the long march through the institutions, or the civil service or whatever, these positions of not really facing reality. They're growing up in kind of middle England.
Yeah.
They get to a sedentary part of the life where they're either retiring or thinking about retiring, and they've got these children who they're ideologically living through. And, they're boring and they're not interested, and then all of a sudden having my son's a woman or my daughter's a man, it
elevates their social status.
I've seen it in America. We've seen it with these rise in Hollywood celebrities, with, kids who are clearly getting either the numbers they're running, your odds of having a transgender child, I would imagine, are ridiculously high. If you've got fucking 3, you go, maybe that's something to do with the environment, the culture.
Yeah, 100%. And these organisations as well, what I've come across, one's called Mama Bears and one's called Mama Dragons. I think they might have split, and when it was one organisation, then they split. And it's all about, it's like an online community for parents with so-called transgender children, or trans-identifying children, that I like to say. And it's almost as if it's this environment which is nurturing this. So there's a condition called Munchausen's by proxy. It's where you get the attention from somebody else's kind of misfortune or condition. It's normally a mother onto a child, making out that the child is really ill when it's maybe not quite as ill as it is, just to bring the attention to the mother. And then the child ends up
believing it through the psychological warfare it's suffered.
Yeah, so I've coined the term, well, I think I heard it somewhere, but these I call them transhausen mums, transhausen by proxy. It's where a parent will say, oh, look at me, I've got this transgender child, and all of a sudden the parent has been elevated socially because everybody's talking about them.
Special difference.
Yeah. And the some of the clinicians in the Tavistock Clinic, which was the gender identity service down in London before it got closed down, the clinicians said, I don't think this is the child pushing this, it's the parents. A lot of the time, it could be that the child was not conforming to social stereotypes, usually young boys, that they were a little bit effeminate, which would normally grow up to be gay. The parents couldn't handle the fact, particularly fathers, that the son was gay, but they could handle the fact that the child was transgender.
Yeah, so it was a woman trapped in a man's body, and everything that comes with that in terms of, boobs off, I would imagine, hysterectomy at some point, and obviously some kind of surgery to make some other part of your body. Yeah,
well, yeah.
A dick.
I'll give you an example.
Dick, I use that term lightly.
Yeah, I'll tell you how it works. So, and I'll use a person that reached out to me as an example. So there's a young lady who now identifies as a man, called, my mind has just gone blank. I'll come back
Doesn't
to
matter anyway. Go on, yeah.
I'll come back to it.
Go on, yeah.
But it's important. Dimitri, okay. I said to Dimitri, I always use sex-based pronouns. You know you're a female, you're not a man, even though I'm looking at you and you've got a beard and you've got hairy legs than I have, all right? You got more tattoos than me. Dimitri Lucifer Rodriguez, she calls herself.
Okay, she chosen a couple of names
She chose that name, yeah.
Okay,
I think Dimitri's birth name was Emily. And Dimitri reached out to me on TikTok and wanted to tell her story. So I met her down in Warwickshire. I took my cameras down like we have here and I did an interview. Now, Dimitri has had what's euphemistically called top surgery. That means a double mastectomy. So she had a breast removed and her nipples fell off because of narcosis. They died. The nipple and
blood vessels
fell off.
Didn't nip back in. And
so Dimitri's now had tattooed nipples put on. She's now saving up to have what's called bottom surgery. All right, so that's to get a fake penis put on. So what they do is they get the arm and they take a layer of flesh off the arm, they roll it up, produce a fake penis, and they put prosthetic testicles in. One of them is a pump so that they can pump it up.
Sounds fantastic. This sounds like really productive towards healthy living. I've got my Whoop on here and I'm thinking, fuck, can that get me a bit fitter? I mean, you're going to cause yourself. If that's your son or your daughter and they're not 18, if they make that choice, Steve, then unfortunately they're adult, consenting adults at some point. But to allow a child, for me, and if that's been allowed in this country, that is shocking. Dimitri
now's in her mid-20s, I believe. And we got on really well.
Was she when this happened?
I'm not
Under
sure.
18?
No, no, she was above that. The thing, Dimitri reached out to me and said, listen, I agree with what you're doing, going out on the street saying, keep this away from kids. I made the decision, when I was older and I'm an adult, I can do it. Yeah. But even, when you say, and I say, if you live your life how you want, as long as it doesn't bother anybody else. And when you're an adult, you can make your own decisions. But I'm increasingly leaning towards maybe some people need to be helped from themselves. Maybe should we really allow this surgery? Because a lot of the young adults are regretting it when they get older.
Well, this is the problem with stifling debate and discussion and people violently assaulting you, because you could have gone, do you know what, I can't deal with this anymore. I'm fucking too long in the tooth of him. I don't need this, because I imagine you've got a brilliant life outside of getting shit through on you in city centres.
It's been great, yeah, it has.
But also, you persist through because you're a good man and you got great intention, and obviously the upsides is far outweighing the negative moments out there.
Yeah, it is. I mean, what I didn't realise is going out on the streets, I would be having some fantastic conversations with great everyday people. And I was really excited to come to Liverpool a few months ago for the first time, because I thought, I used to work in the city centre or all around Liverpool in the period between leaving the military and joining the fire service. And
you said you knew Iton really well.
I do. We could talk about that a bit. But getting out onto the streets, talking to people and explaining this to them, it's been really good. It's, because I retired from the fire service, everybody needs a purpose in life, I suppose. And I was put in this unique position where I no longer have any paymasters, you know, so I'm uncancelable, you know. And as I said before, people can come up to me. They don't feel intimidated by me, even if they can try and intimidate me and it doesn't work. But I feel like I'm the ideal candidate to do this, but the amount of people that I've spoken to and I've raised awareness about what this agenda is doing and the harms that it's doing, and they've gone off and I said, go to your school, see what they're teaching your kids in school, because this is how they get into the young kids.
Well, it was the Long March for the Institutions. It was the guy, is it Yuri Brezhnev, was the guy the KGB guy who defected to Canada? And they put him on, and they said, "Look, this was the plan to destabilize, society."
Yeah, quite possibly. I recall that name. I didn't realize it was linked towards.
Yeah, there's a great
agenda.
YouTube documentary on him. He was a defector out of the KGB, and he said, "Look, this is the way they will attack your society." It's and obviously with the CCP in China, you know, they're getting quite Orwellian here, but with the big free states, and America being one of those, and obviously we're handcuffed to them through some kind of strategic alliance, even though at the minute, they're trying to pull us into this European one world, one government, no borders, no national identity. Anything against that is, right-wing and xenophobic. And then the other side of that is obviously, the Chinese, because I think I'm interested in visiting Taiwan, because I'm like, it'll go off there within the next 10 years.
Yeah.
It's inevitable. And then obviously the Chinese are at play in terms of, TikTok famous like yourself. I think we're all right on TikTok now. We're not as big as you, Steve, but you look at that and you go, okay, all these competing ideologies are at play. We get banned off TikTok for certain things, off YouTube for certain words. X has been a bit more of a free platform to discuss recently. But obviously Meta or Facebook, I don't really do Instagram because of I don't think they're useful for me. And obviously now I've even changed the way, because this Online Safety Act, I've even changed the way I see using the social media platforms I've previously used. Does it concern you that the government will try and shut you up or shut you down?
It happened during the COVID era. We saw how the social media platforms would not tolerate any kind of dissent from the prescribed narrative. Facebook was massive on that. YouTube was massive on that as well. X was massive on that. So it depends. I think we've all been kettled into social media platforms, and they could pull the plug at any time.
Yeah.
I think there's something to be said about maybe getting your own website and trying to build a following. If you're pushing something, some kind of cause, maybe something a little bit more independent than these social media platforms, because they could just pull the plug like that. Well,
they're petrified now with this, obviously, with this online safety bill. I mean, I'm the same. I'm like, okay, we have to be, and I don't think they'll change that. I think that's here to stay, and they will probably try and tighten the screw on that if Yvette Cooper and, Keir Starmer sits at the head of it. I don't think they're going to have that peeled back and go, okay, sorry, because they believe in their ideology, rightly or wrongly, that they're protecting children.
Yeah, well, this is it. Everything is always about safety and protecting the kids. Yeah, and you look at, they call it the online safety bill. Things are almost like opposite to what they say they are. It's not an online safety bill. That's the official line, but it's cancelling freedom of speech. There's ways around it. I think at the moment, I've got a VPN. You can get a VPN and pretend you're in a different country, because what they're trying to do now, there's lots of people that are standing up or going protesting outside the migrant hotels, the undocumented migrants coming over.
The illegal invaders. Yeah,
well, I mean, this is the thing. All those people that I was marching in front of on Saturday, like as you said, they were supposedly standing up for women's rights. Then they were standing up for trans rights. Then they were saying free Palestine, and then they were saying refugees are welcome here. But they're not refugees. If they were refugees, they would have women and children with them.
And also they've passed through 16 safe countries to get here.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. So, I mean, it's being allowed. It's being allowed because they want to. I think they want to disrupt the West and cause some kind of civil. Whether it's, I don't like to say civil war, but it's some kind of civil disturbance, so that then they can clamp down on us.
So I spoke to Gareth Icke, David Icke, one of David Icke's sons.
I know Gareth
spoke about problem, reaction, solution.
Yeah,
they've already got, built in. What I don't understand, Steve, is how we can have so much CCTV, so much resource, and yet, people don't seem safe. How is that possible? How have we got such resource being spent on policing, and yet young girls walking the street, or people walking the street with any valuables might feel at any point they could be attacked and those valuables taken from them, when we've got the same force policing social media for hatey words?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it's all these cameras and things like that are about safety. It's about control. It's about control. And again, as we talked about, putting our conspiracy hats on, this new world order, they want, I believe truly that they want a one world government, and they want to depopulate the planet as well. They think there's too many people on the planet.
We have to think logically about COVID. That, for me, I don't know whether you were vaccinated.
No, I wasn't.
I wasn't.
No.
And it's not to say that I haven't been vaccinated in the past, if I've gone on football trips or whatever, or the flu vaccination, or whatever. I have had them in the past. But obviously, just with what happened with COVID and what me and my family went through, we didn't at that point get vaccinated. And then the more and more information I'm seeing, the more and more delighted I've been with that decision. Probably one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life, because my wife was pregnant at the time with our fourth child, and had there been a necessary, to get the baby vaccinated, and then there's any complications, when we're talking about the parents of children with gender dysphoria or distress, you called it, maybe dysphoria, distress. When you're talking about parents of children who've, maybe been very liberal with the kids and allowed them to think they were a certain way, and then that's forced them through speaking to so-called experts in clinics that, this is what you need to do, because if you don't, the child might become suicidal or whatever it is that they were saying kids. Next minute you're down a path of drastic life-altering surgery and chemical alteration. And if you've done that to your own child, how are you going to say you were wrong? Like if you're wrong about, you get something wrong at work, or you fucking, the shame, and imagine you now sitting there going, like same people with COVID who force people via work processes to get vaccinated, and then bad stuff happen to them or complications. How do you live? You can't ever accept reality, Steve, because you realise how much of a cunt you are.
The parents.
Excuse me, French, but
yeah, absolutely. The parents that transition the children, they're going to go down with the ship.
Oh, yeah, they're playing the band, mate. Yeah,
they can never accept what they've done is wrong.
Well, they're the people who, when I watch this take place all over the world, because I don't just watch your stuff, I see, a lot of the stuff I pick up comes out of the States first, because there's usually, disruption out there first, and then you see it wash over the UK. Some get a bit more traction here than others. Others take off here more than they do there. But it's similar political unrest, and when you see the people who defend the positions, you can see that, and because they've taken, they can't just go to confession anymore. Forgive me, Father, for I've sinned. I've done this. How many fucking Hail Marys and Our Fathers? They've got to live with this forever, because of the way the church has gone now. A lot of people have become secular. Might be atheist. Certainly this ideology goes away from the church. I don't find these are usually God-fearing people. I'm not saying I am, man in the sky people, I don't know. And this is what I'm finding, is the extremities now of social media has been a great thing for people, but it's also allowed a lot of people to get very extreme in the way they believe, the way they see the world.
I don't think this transgender agenda would have got this far if it wasn't for the internet and social media.
Yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned religion, because one thing that I think that the Muslims and the Christians can come together in is fighting against this agenda. I get love bombed when I get go out on the streets by the Christian, evangelical Christians in Manchester. They all come up to me, and ask me, I'm a pastor, do you want to come to my church? And
who's the geezer with the cross, carrying the cross?
Oh,
Kirk.
Kirk.
The other day,
Kirk Church is his YouTube channel. I tell you what, there was one comedy moment. It was so funny. I led a trans rights. I kind of trolled a trans rights march, if you like, if you want to call it trolling. They had a trans rights march, which was marching through Manchester. This was maybe a month or so ago. And I use the trans flag as my board and have an anti-trans message. So I basically led the front of their march all the way through Manchester. And obviously, I've got my freedom of expression and freedom of movement. I was getting jostled as well then, and they were trying to wave the flag in front of me. But we were going from up towards Piccadilly Gardens, following the tram lines, and Kirk got this massive cross, which is, 8 foot tall, and it says Jesus saves across it. And the trans march was coming up, and he stood with this cross in the way. And I was coming up, and Charlie Veach was there, Billy Moore was there, all the other YouTubers from Manchester was there. And this was kind of like this religious, symbolic defiance of the debauchery which was coming their way. And it was just a beautiful moment. You can see it on, you can see it on my YouTube channel. You can see it on a few of the other YouTubers' channels. And it was just amazing to see that.
So this is the thing, this resistance is out there. And why I worry about you is because when I see what it looks like happened at Epping, where you had a load of disgruntled, disgusted, outraged parents that illegal invaders have been put up at taxpayers' expense and are now sexually assaulting or allegedly sexually assaulting young girls in the community, and mothers are protesting there. And then we see what it looked to be, I don't know whether this was right or not, but it looked to be agitators bust in, refugees are welcome, all with the similar placards that you see, almost like a kind of rent-a-mob bust in to antagonise the local community. The police are obviously there to protect both sides of that, but then when local youths come down and defend the mums and it gets quite hostile, the police are then quick to ferry away these kind of rent-a-mob people. And it looks like they were getting lifts in police vehicles, or certainly escorted and protected. And the police, for me, should, remain impartial. That's what they're there to do. But clearly, the long march through the institutions has touched many, many places. And I think if we're going to make progress in our society, I think we need to have a sensible discussion and conversation about, common sense things like up is up and down is down. A man's a man and a woman's a woman. And yet there is some ambiguity for certain, circumstances, but that doesn't mean that we're going to alter it for that. We've got to keep black being black, white being white, and, the grey area in the middle, we have to have a sensible grown-up conversation about.
Yeah, of course. I mean, people always accepted that there was a small amount of people, or usually men, that cross-dressed, and we accepted that. Yeah, and that was fine.
Perversion, yeah. There's a name for it, isn't it? Where there's some kind of, where like you get arachnophobia for spiders. There's something where men get turned on by dressing as women. Do
you want me to break down what I see as a three? Because when you talk about somebody being trans or transgender,
well, this just arms our viewers with the information, because this is about educating and informing.
Yeah.
Speaking to you today for me is an education.
Yeah, so there's probably more than this, but and your psychotherapist will be able to give you the more detailed kind of categorization.
Yeah, if you want to sit on the couch and pay 600 quid for an hour, or you can listen to this for nothing.
Yeah, I've identified kind of 3 types of people that identify as transgender, or that suffer gender dysphoria, shall I say. The latter one don't really suffer it. They're using it as a tool. So the first one, there was always young boys that identify or didn't conform to social stereotypes. I think we mentioned this earlier. Normally grew up to be gay, or puberty was the cure, but they were just left to be who they were. The second group was middle-aged men. All right, and there's different types here, but generally there's a condition called autogynephilia.
That's the one I'm thinking of.
So these are men who get a sexual rush, or their kink is to be imagined as a woman. Okay. Now you talked about Bruce Jenner earlier. Okay, Bruce Jenner was the 1976 Olympic decathlon gold medalist for the United States.
Yeah, it must have been on the Go Faster juice, height of the Cold War there.
Yeah.
Must have.
Yeah, so you couldn't get anybody more macho than a gold
discipline,
a gold medal winner in the decathlon. He got caught in his daughter's bedroom wearing his daughter's knickers, all right, when his family came home unexpectedly. He's an autogynephile in my eyes.
Okay.
All right. And how is he going to explain this out?
That's a strange thing to do, though, even if you are an autogynephile. That's a strange thing to do.
Yeah. So how are you going to explain that out? I'm not really a man, I'm a woman, and I've had this condition. You know, I don't think he would admit to being autogynephilia. He'd admit to, I'm a trans woman. You know, I don't feel like I'm in the right body. 2015, Bruce Jenner was made Glamour Magazine Woman of the Year. Yeah.
We're peak absurdity times, though. We'll look back on this and go, that's when they fucking lost the marbles.
So, but here's the thing. He's grown up. He's not.
Has he had them? He'll have had them in.
He's had them put in.
But they don't like surgery, do they? Any of the Kardashians? They wouldn't have a good plastic surgery.
Yeah, so he's had them,
natural looking.
But he's not had his tackle chopped off, so
he's kept it.
Yeah, he's kept that. So that's the one that's the late onset gender dysphoria. Okay, is the autogynephiles or the transsexuals.
Yeah.
Okay, the early ones were
part-timers, we're going to call them.
Yeah, or the ones.
If you don't get your dick chopped off, you're not fully committed in my book.
Yeah, absolutely. You know? This is the category of which is open to exploitation, the loophole which predatory males can enter via that. So we've talked about the young lads. Now there's another group which a lady called Lisa Lippman coined the term rapid onset gender dysphoria. And this was predominantly teenage girls, okay, which were entering puberty. A lot of them had suffered many different types of trauma in their early life. A lot of them was sexual trauma, sexual assault, and they started growing secondary sex characteristics, growing the breasts and stuff, and they didn't want it. They wanted to remain a boy. So they're saying, I'm not a woman, I'm a boy. These are the type of people that were susceptible to other things in the past, like bulimia, anorexia, and there was a phase of cutting. You know, they don't like their bodies, self-harming. Many people that identify as transgender that come up to speak to me in the street, I look at the forearms and they're absolutely covered in scars. These people have been messed up, and this ideology has taken these young kids, and whatever trauma you've suffered that are making you feel like that, they're not exploring those. The clinicians aren't exploring them. They're just saying, oh, well, maybe you were born in the wrong body.
Yeah. But also the stranger thing, I don't know whether I heard you talk about this. There was something where you were saying there was a site that was showing the surgeries of young boys transitioning, getting a meat and veg chopped off for people to go on and watch. That was found on a porn site or something like that for people who were interested in watching that.
I think there was stuff like that originally on Tumblr, but there's actually there's a YouTube video of a surgery being done of what's called a phalloplasty, where a male will have his tackle chopped off, his penis will be inverted, turned inside out to make a fake vagina. And you can see the surgery on YouTube. It's like horrific, not for the faint-hearted.
Well, the strangest thing about this is we live in a world where, you know, we've got places like, let's say, for instance, Thailand or Asia that have obviously men with the same thought process who, you know, the ladyboy, Thai ladyboy or whatever, but it's certainly in that part of the world, it's been a bit more acceptable. And they don't seem to have the same societal problems as what we're having in terms of accepting that there is some people out there and we have to have some clear boundaries to protect the most vulnerable people, which are women and children.
Yeah, and I think the difference there is I don't think they're pushing it on the children in schools. They're letting them grow up and then the guys are being who they want to be. Now, I spoke to Billy Moore, the podcaster Billy Moore, and he was in a Thai jail for quite a number of years, living or sleeping next to this Thai prostitute, this ladyboy. And he said basically all these ladyboys are basically prostitutes.
So I went to Thailand as a kid, 20 years of age, and I got chased. I got chased by a couple of them on a moped to try and mug me. And they were definitely ladyboys, but they'd kind of had a little... One would pop out and go, whatever. And you can see quite clearly it wasn't a female. And then I've gone in the shop and come back out. And by the time I've come back out, luckily they still have glass bottles out there. So I bought like a bottle of pop, but it was a glass bottle. Remember the old fashioned lemonade bottles? And I had it in a bag amongst other, crisps and whatever I was eating. And as I'm walking back, I had flip-flops on. And I heard this motorbike coming behind me. And it was the one who was hiding behind the thing with another one to try and mug me, so I had to get a bit of a sprint on in flip-flops. But they gained on me relatively quickly. I had to swing the bottle at them. Luckily, they swerved and then came back for me once more time. I swung it at them again, and then they realised I wasn't an easy mark. But if it had been intoxicated there, I'd have been definitely mugged, and who knows what else happens at the end of it. Now, that's my only experience of a foreign transgender person. So obviously I'm not coming at it from, seeing people around here as a kid or in Liverpool where I grew up. Your nan or your mum would say, it's the fucking mentally ill fella that. You got a fella in with lippy on, and when I seen, I think he's calling himself Kelly Maloney now, but when I seen Frank Maloney, who I presume you're putting in that second category, Kelly Maloney, the boxing promoter.
Oh yes, Frank Maloney. Yeah,
it was Frank Maloney for years.
Yes, of course.
And I was like, what? I thought it was a joke at first. I'm like, surely he must put the makeup on and think, nobody's believing for a second, Frank, that you're a woman. Yeah. I've respect for you, doing it. I'm not, but you can't go and get changed next to my daughter, mate. Like, you just can't. Sorry, and you can't go and compete against my daughter in the boxing, regardless of how old you are. It's just wrong.
Yeah, Frank Maloney was Lennox Lewis's manager, wasn't he?
Yeah, but again, it talks into that category of do people get to a stage with DI where all of a sudden you become white male and stale, which is what was happening to a lot of people. And we spoke about parents of young kids with some gender issues, wanting to feel special, and then all of a sudden these men they've wanted to be alpha males, maybe not, because the behaviour to getting into the 40s and 50s reached that point. Kids have grown up to do their own thing, and they've just gone, right, I need to fucking keep myself going here. And all of a sudden, if I call myself Susan, I'm fucking special, and everyone thinks, I'm dead brave, and actually I can go and do lots of other things that if I was just a perverted old man, I would be frowned upon in society for.
Yeah, but with that, they're allowing it, aren't they? It was so surreal on Saturday when I was at this women's rights march, and half of them were men in dresses. Yeah. They were speaking about women's rights. There was a man with this dress on, male pattern baldness, a bald head with long hair.
I seen the hat came off in the wind or something like that.
The
hat came off in the wind. Yeah. That's how you knew it was bald. When I say it,
this same bloke, the same bloke that was speaking at this women's rights rally was the same bloke that attacked me at the trans rights rally a couple of weeks ago.
I heard you say that to him.
Yeah. When I say attack me, he literally came, grabbed me, and pulled my, tried to pull my boards. They're on like bungee cords, and it kind of like come back and hit me a little bit.
Well, I seen the guy in Brighton that ran away with your boards, and you had to rugby tackle him, which I thought was a great tackle, especially on the concrete.
Yeah, my elbow's still a little bit sore. So what happened there in Brighton is, and there's a court case coming up in January with that, but not with the guy that stole my boards. But this is how creepy they can be. The police said to me after they'd arrested the person that covered me in soup, the police said, we've got to wait here. We've got a duty of care to you. So we've got to make sure you leave the scene safely before we go. And then they promptly just drove off and left me. So I'm walking down Brighton seafront. I'd made friends with this other lady that was supporting me. And we walked down, and when I leave a scene after I've been there with my boards, I always have both cameras rolling. So I have my chest camera rolling, and then I have a selfie stick with another camera. So that's watching behind me. We walked for over half a mile down Brighton seafront. Just before I got to my vehicle, I said, right, we're going to stop here. and see if we're being followed. Stopped, turned round, and lo and behold, a guy had followed us for over half a mile. So the lady with us was pretending, she started talking, saying, when's all the other people going to arrive? You know, as if we've got to have a lot of people, so as if we're not on our own. And I just said, I'm just going to go and confront him. So I walked over to him and I said, are you following me? And he went, yes, I'm going to make sure you leave Brighton. How dare you come down to Brighton spreading your hate? And then he had the cheek to say, I don't want to be filmed. And I'm thinking, you just stalked me for bloody, half a mile. And then he grabs my boards and runs off with them. And nobody's taken my stuff from me. I don't care how big. He was like 6 foot plus. I'm 5'5". And obviously I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want a criminal record for knocking somebody out age 50, in my mid 50s almost. But I'm following this guy, and I don't know if people know Brighton. The seafront's at the bottom, and then there's a promenade at the top, and it's about 30 metres of steps. So I'm following him up these steps, trying to pull my boards off him. I've got a tripod camera in one hand. I've got my phone trying to ring the police in the other hand. I've got my chest camera on. And so I can't get the boards off him. And he's saying, these are my boards now. I thought, right. He's made this, he's literally confessed that he's stealing them. So I get to the top of the steps, I'm trying to push him off, and he's at it, don't you dare touch me. And he starts to march across the road. So I then make the decision that I'm going to take him down. So I follow him and I say to him, I give him a warning and I say, this, I said, what was the word I said? I was gonna say this, no, I said, this won't work out well for you, mate. I think that's what I said. Oh no, I said, this is not a good idea, because I knew it wasn't going to work out well from him. So we got over the road. I put my tripod down and I went and did a low tackle on him.
What was a belter? Yeah, the Lions would have been proud of that out in Australia.
Yeah, so I've actually not. People say, oh, he must have been a rugby player. I've never played rugby, but I have done like almost 8 years of Brazilian Jiu-jitsu. So
you were in head first there though, like no messing about there, Steve.
Yeah, you've got to commit yourself fully on these.
That, mate.
You've got to commit yourself, and like I say, I've still got a sore elbow.
So you going
it.
through the process? So I take it you've taken some kind of legal advice and you've spoke through with people to say, okay, if this happens, I'm going to have to respond X, Y, and Z to make sure you're covered. Yeah,
you can legally make arrests. You can use a minimal amount of force.
Yeah.
Now, the beauty of knowing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is that they call it the gentle art, if people don't know. It's a martial art without any striking. It's all about taking people down, holding them down. If you wanted to submit them, you would either choke them unconscious or you'd break a limb or something like that, pop the shoulder out. So it teaches you how to manipulate people. The great thing about that is, for somebody like myself that's small, when you get somebody on the floor, size doesn't matter as much.
Well, I think when I see the Manchester airport incident, I think all police officers should have to reach a certain level of martial arts, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, before they should be allowed to police, really.
Yeah, and I actually train with some police that watch my channel as well and see it, and they've actually given me advice, like you say, on what to do. And so I basically thought, I'm going to have this guy. I put my tripod down. Unfortunately, as I go to dive him, the tripod falls over, but it catches the tackle. So I'll go fully in, get at his knees and take him to the ground this way. And then I put what's called a figure 4 Kimura on him. So I'm on his back and I weave my arms underneath and just hold him. So I've got 2 on 1 and he just can't move once he's on there.
I see another gentleman comes along, doesn't he? Doesn't kind of know what's gone on. And you're trying to explain to him as you're holding him on the ground.
Yeah, that's it. And then the guy on the floor says he's spreading hate. He's spreading he's got an anti-trans message. And the guy, the member of the public that comes along, who I'm trying to get to phone the police, looks at the signs. He goes, "Oh, for fuck's sake, it is anti-trans," and throws the boards down on the floor and says, "You get off him." So this guy who was the criminal nicking my stuff, okay, members of the public, if they disagree with me and agree with the perpetrator of either the violence or the theft, they will side with that person. It's something that I've discovered.
Well, you've seen this play out in conflicts where you go, how's that happened? How were they able to do that? Well, all of a sudden they agree with the ideology and they're prepared for anything.
Yeah, it is frightening. You know, the people that have assaulted me, smacked me in the face, or they've thrown soup over me or chili sauce, if the person disagrees with my message, when I say disagree, they've been captured by the gender ideology cult, They will back a criminal, somebody that's committed violence against me, over me. There's one time it didn't happen, and that was when I was attacked in Liverpool the first time, and a Muslim lady called the police for me because I was holding this person that had chili sauce been hit me in the face, and she later comes, she said, I may or may not agree with you, but nobody should be treated like that, and that's why I called the police.
Fair. So there's a lot of good people out there.
Yeah.
You know, it's just obviously the lunatics have got a loud voice and are quite adamant on causing problems for anyone they disagree with.
Yeah.
And, you know, most people are moderate. Most people do see common sense and want to see, you know, good things happen to other people in the world. But then you do get this fringe element who are just, you know, entitled. They're the victim. They're going to take whatever they want and any advantage they can. So, Steve, just for me, can you take me back to, was there a specific moment where you've gone, okay, I'm looking at the world around me and, you know, I've got to speak out, I've got to say something about it?
It was a gradual thing with a trans agenda, I think. I saw it, as I said, the Long March through the institutions. I saw these policies being written in the fire service. This was quite a long time ago. The appearance policy said that you can come into work and identify as whatever you want. And that's it. Oh my God. So I could go into the women's toilets if I want. I saw the loophole straight away. That was the first thing. I started Brazilian Jiu-jitsu. I listened to Joe Rogan say how the trans rights activists came for him. So that's when I was getting into my Jiu-jitsu then, and I learned about Fallon Fox, and I thought, this is absolutely nuts. At first, people thought it was, you know, they didn't take it too seriously, and I still think the public don't understand how serious this is. COVID came and went. I mean, I was a bit of an activist during the COVID time, because as we explained earlier, I realised that this was an orchestrated global event rather than something that just occurred naturally. And then I went to a freedom festival, and Kelly J. Keane was there. Posey Parker, Kelly J. Keane. Yeah. And she gave a talk, and I stood up and asked a question at the end, and I said, what can men do to help? Because it was all women, you know, she was having all these Let Women Speak events, and she was trying to fight for these rights. And she said, men, you need to find your voice. Particularly if you're fathers of children, you need to go into your schools and demand to know what they're teaching your kids. And that sat with me for a bit. And then we went on for an extended holiday, my wife and I, at the beginning of this year. It was just after Christmas we went away, and then we stayed away for the winter. And I was debating this kind of stuff online, and the fierce pushback that I got from some trans rights activists, and from what Kelly J. Keane had said, I was contemplating all this while I was away. And I was watching Billboard Chris. So I've Billboard Chris was part of my inspiration as well to do this. He's been doing this for 5 years, and he's a master at it. You know, he's really good with his facts and figures. I'm no way near there yet, but I'm getting there. And the more you do this, the more, you know.
Sharpen your tools.
You get sharpened, yeah. And so all the time I was away, up until April this year, I was planning on actually getting out on the streets and doing this. And that's when I come up with the idea of using the trans flag against them. It's really good when these trans rights activists see the flag from a distance, and they get a massive big smile on their face and think, oh, we've got somebody support. You know, we've got an ally here. And
can you see the moment?
Yes, there's times you see the moment, and it's like
penny drop.
And you can see the mental gymnastics going on. So I know what I'm doing from that point of view. But what it does, if I just had a black sign like Billboard Chris, they might not notice it. But they notice it and they come over. So,
and also, if people are paying attention to it, taking photos, they might think you're with them and actually keep you in the photograph.
It still confuses some people, but most people get it. So I'm there. It provokes conversation. you
which
know,
is ultimately
a lot more,
what you're there to
which is
do.
what I want to do because they try to defend the ideology, but you can't defend the indefensible. You can convince yourself you're right, but it just doesn't stack up. You just watch the videos and you see.
Yeah, it goes down to feelings. Well, it's like, well, hang on, we can't
So
distort object reality.
So so I decided to do it over those 3 months away. I decided to do it, and when I came back, I'd ordered. We've got a great signs guy in Manchester that produces the signs. I won't name him. I'd love to give him a plug, but I don't want him to become a target of the activists as well. So he produced these for me. And on the very day that I was picking my signs up, my mate messaged me and he said, I was driving back from Oldham with my new signs. He said, have you seen the Supreme Court ruling? He said, they've just ruled in favour of the Equalities Act, recognising a woman to be a biological female, which we all knew all along. How did it get to a stage where it took years for a court to decide what a 5-year-old knows instantly?
Well, that was when, you know, the Prime Minister of the country couldn't define for a long period what a woman was. And lots of people who consider themselves incredibly intelligent, you know, to the point where they look down the nose at a lot of us, they couldn't define what a woman was.
No, and there was that iconic moment on LBC where Ed Davey, the
from the Lib Dems,
the leader of the Lib Dems, was on with Nick Ferrari, and Nick Ferrari said, he kept pushing it. He kept pushing it, didn't he, Nick Ferrari? And he said, can a woman have a penis? And he wouldn't answer at first. And then eventually he said, can a woman have a penis? And Ed Davey went, well, quite clearly, yes, was the answer. And I that's what I do when we're out on the streets, when they're trying to be, you know, sometimes they try and be intellectual with the answer or belittle me, then I'll just throw in that question. There are 2 questions I'll throw in. I'll say, can a woman have a penis? And they have to say yes, otherwise they will be classed as a transphobe.
Yeah, they're fucked, yeah.
And then the next one, the great one, that you can really catch them on this, I'll say, can a man get pregnant? Because I hold that book up, which is In My Daddy's Belly. I hold that up. And they'll say yes. So I'll say, okay then, if a man can get pregnant and he wants a natural childbirth, where does the baby come out?
Well, I seen that couple the other day, and he went the mouth, and they were giggling. But I seen them start from the position of they thought they were intellectually superior to you, and they were going to put you right in your place, and then realised, oh my God, we're being recorded, and we're actually getting a lesson here.
Yeah, and they just resort to giggles.
Or offending you, or trying to make it. But I'm like, did you not come over for a debate? No, they didn't. They've come over to try and belittle you and antagonise you to do or say something that get you in trouble, rather than actually having a conversation about reality.
Yeah, and that book's a real great one because, I mean, this is how they're poisoning child's mind. I've actually brought it with me. I've left it in my bag.
So it's called In My Daddy's Belly.
Do you want me to just quickly grab it?
So this is the book, what's In My Daddy's Belly?
It's called In My Daddy's Belly. Okay. Now, this isn't on the national curriculum, but you might find it in your kids in the school library. Okay. It's by a person called Logan Brown, who is a woman, is a female, but identifies as a male. And it's literally, when you go through it, you know, it's told from the point of view of the young baby. It's a young baby telling the story about how it ended up in the daddy's belly.
Well, I had a situation in one of the schools with one of our kids where there was 2 daddies and stuff like that, do you know what I mean? Which obviously explaining to kids, it's quite a strange thing, because kids naturally just ask sensible questions. Yeah. They don't have any
no
political correctness or filter on in that regard. And obviously explaining to your kids in them, you know, there's obviously people who are out there different, but that doesn't mean that we are going to distort reality. Yeah. You know, be as sensitive as you can around it, but look, this is the real life situation here. This is why that's occurred. Now, that stuff, I think, so when you get to your biology class then in seniors and you're going, well, hang on a sec, what have we been taught to this point? And now you're telling us that men can have babies.
Yeah.
Well, we have to have a common data point here to say, look, we accept that men can be born or feel they are a different personality, but also that's not going to allow them biologically to have babies.
From the point of view of the trans rights activists, trans men are men. Okay, so that's why they can have a baby.
Well, I've just changed that to pretend now.
Yeah, and that's why I say pretend men are men.
Yeah.
So that's that as well. Trans women are women is the main.
And I've seen a few of these bandstands where, you know, kids are all sitting there, and kids are impressionable. They're like sponges, and this is why they obviously attempt to, you know, get religion into them as early as they can, or get some of the, you know, the other ideologies into them as early as they can, because they want, you know, to create these controllable people further down the line. But then you see these bandstands where there's, I think, you know, trans performers in drag or whatever going to schools or getting access to young children. And then 6 months down the line, it's, oh yeah, it was convicted of X, Y, and Z. There was somebody, wasn't it, to do with Pride, convicted of child abuse.
Stephen Ireland from Surrey Pride.
And then they go, oh, and you're like, oh, but they're in the minority. It's like, well, there shouldn't be one. Like, so the fact that yous are putting children in harm's way, if there is any blowback, which there has been, then head should roll. What's actually happened is people have been accelerated on into positions of even more influence and even more power. It's and we wonder why society is kind of getting to a kind of boiling point. You know, today we were speaking about this morning now, Yvette Cooper, who's now the Home Secretary. I said to her in Knowsley, she was very forthright, calling the people who protested similar to Epping, although it did have, you know, a little bit more violence and kind of police vehicles with damage and stuff like that. But I mean, I haven't seen the footage from there, and I don't know whether there was any of those agitators, because we've seen with the miners in Ogrieve, it looks like our current state's position is any dissent, any people who aren't really going with the flow, well, we know better, and we're going to interject there, and we're going to put, you know, allegedly in Epping, paid rent-a-mob agitators who pop up all around the country at certain times and places to antagonise people who have legitimate concerns about their local communities. And as I say, I've seen that play out in Knowsley. It was one of the real tipping points for me, crossing over from being a sportsman into, we've got to say something here. Because I've got kids and they're going to have kids. And if I feel like we're the generation, Steve, maybe you've got to this point, that if we don't say anything, it might be too late for the ones who come after us.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think now's the time to nail your colours to the mast. I don't care what people label me with now, because I've had that many accusations thrown at me. It doesn't matter. You know, if you're true to yourself and your beliefs, then it's time to speak up. And that's why I'm following this agenda now. A while back, I was like, you know, we talked about the wars, first Gulf War. We talked about the Iraq War, 2003. There was Syria,
Afghanistan.
Libya. If there were genuine refugees, you know, that, you know, were displaced because of bombs from the West, I think we've got a duty of care to those people. But that's not what's happening now. There's a trade, there's a business in these people coming over. You know, you've got these people traffickers making the money. But I think there's a deeper agenda, a bigger agenda, that they know it's happening. They could stop it, but they're allowing it to happen.
There's that much money being made. There's that much. Just follow the money like anything else. You know, the hotels, the contracts. We've seen it with COVID. You know, the Michelle Moan still hasn't paid back £200 million. That was obviously a VIP lane. You know, everybody was outraged for the period. Now they've moved on. You know, if you got your tax wrong by a couple of grand and you're a working man out in this, you know, self-assessment, then you'd be put in jail for it.
Yeah, and I think it's even bigger than just the money as well. When I explained earlier about the way that the world is ordered and national sovereignty, I think they're trying to break that down. They're trying to, you know,
one nation, digital ID. Get rid of national identity. You know what it is to be an Englishman or a Welshman or an Italian, and it's all part of this one movement. You genuinely think that goes right back to that first iteration, the what do you call it, Nations League?
The League of Nations. The League of Nations was the first attempt at a one world government, or the first push towards it, and then it was the United Nations.
So who's driving this? Is this WEF, this World Economic Forum.
That's part of it. That's a way. As I say, there's power outside of the nation state. There's other seats of power. So you've got the nation state, but the World Economic Forum it's like this organization where all the biggest companies of the world that wield more power than some governments.
Yeah.
It's a way of getting all them on side.
Wielding soft power.
But what you had during the COVID era was there was a coalition between the United Nations and the World Economic Forum. They came together in 2019 to push the Sustainable Development Goals. And don't forget, the COVID policy was implemented through workplace hierarchies. You know, I felt that in the fire service. So all the COVID policies, you're going to lose your job if you don't comply.
Rock thing, isn't it? If you don't have a certain quota, you don't get certain funding and all. Yeah, so this is this, and the more and more you look at it, you see the Bill Gates. You know, as soon as Starmer gets in, you have Bill Gates in down the street. You have it wasn't George Soros, was it? Who's the other guy who put Larry Page? Is it not Larry? It might have been
Larry Fink.
Larry Fink. Sorry, yeah. Larry Page, a comedian. Fucking hell. Larry Fink, the BlackRock guy, was in there, and everyone's like, well, I think it's Lewis Brackpool, is it? One of the guys online talking about asking for Freedom of Information Acts to go. Well, what was discussed there? Like Bill Gates is on one hand wanting to get rid of meat off the planet, on another hand releasing mosquitoes into a certain part of the world with nanotechnology in them. You know, who is Bill Gates? To me, Steve, he doesn't look like the picture of health. I'm like, he's a computer fucking nerd who it looked like tried to monopolise a certain part of technology and came up short, although made himself incredibly wealthy. Then's had, a dodgy past, should we say, with Epstein and his wife and a divorce, and then next minute he's telling everyone how to live fit and healthy, and he looks like a fucking dried up prune. Yeah,
his family were eugenicists. Now, what people might not know is Bill Gates is buying up all the lots of farmland in America. Now,
we're the CCP as well, isn't it? It's not just Gates, isn't it? Wasn't the Chinese doing this as well?
I'm not sure. But just to follow on, Bill Gates flew over to the UK in his private jet and had a one-on-one with Starmer. Okay, it was a year or two ago now. And
that must have been to show him how to delete his internet browser to get rid of all the Ukrainian rent boy porn he'd been watching.
Do you know what it actually was? It was to give Starmer a strategy to get the land off the farmers.
Ah, okay.
You see the farmers are under attack now.
Clarkson's beating about it, yeah.
He came over and told Starmer, I believe, to put the inheritance tax on the farms so that they'll just give up and then the state can buy or our corporations can buy the land. Because if you control the food supply, that's it, you control the people.
It's scary times. I wanted to ask you, what was the first thing that you realised and you're like, I've got to speak out? Or flip the switch, go, I can't just carry on without saying anything here.
Well, we touched very early on when I joined the fire service, and I said there was a guy called Fred O'Brien that was a bit of my mentor, and this was when 9/11 happened as well. I joined the fire service 2001. Not long after, I was at my first fire station. I was on duty the day that the Twin Towers came down.
I was going to say, they couldn't. I remember watching. You couldn't have, the fire service in the aftermath of that couldn't have been held in any higher regard by everybody. And when Fred O'Brien was speaking differently to other people, and this led up to the war in Iraq, and the media was painting Saddam Hussein as this really bad guy, and Fred was giving me a little bit of a different narrative, and he said, the world is controlled by rich billionaire people. It's not how, that Halliburton was the Bush's old man and all
these
that
were the
involved,
war hawks, weren't they?
There was a paper,
the neoconservatives, and I think it was Fred that told me about, read this paper called The Project for the New American Century.
So was it? There's a great thing, I'm sure it's called Loose Change. That was like a big YouTube documentary back in the day. We actually had someone reached out about getting the guy on who'd shot it, so I'm hoping to get him on one day, but it was about the Twin Towers coming down, and obviously the military-industrial complex with, you know, Armour Corps, I think, was one of the companies. The other one was Halliburton.
Yeah.
And that, you know, lots of the executive branch of American government, including George Bush Sr., whose son was currently serving as president.
Doug Bolton.
It was just the billions that were made from the
John
Americans.
Bolton, I mean.
Yeah. You know, the billions that were made by these big corporations from America being in a state of war in the Middle East.
Was it Paul Warburg? I might have got the name wrong there. And Fred told me about this and he said, listen, read John Pilger. There's a great book called The New Rulers of the World. So I read that and it blew me away. It completely changed. You know, this is what led me on to go to Open University to study international relations. So I started talking to people then. So that was my switch. That was the main question. So I started telling people, you know, the world is not like it's being portrayed on the TV. Yeah. This is happening and this is happening. And they go, oh no, you're a nutcase. Nobody would listen. Yeah. And so from that point, I wanted to gain knowledge and I never trusted the TV. So I started speaking out about it then. So I was very, anti.
So are you online here though? Or are you just speaking locally to people on the ground? Are you meeting in the pub or out and about? Or?
Both. I mean, we're going back. This was really before the main social medias and stuff. I don't think Facebook got big until about 2007.
Like MySpace and stuff like that.
Yeah, all that stuff came. Yeah, I don't think I had an account on that. But I was speaking to people, but they didn't want to know. And people still don't want to know.
It's tough to connect as easily as it is now with like-minded, people.
It is. And I've learned a bit of a different strategy, although sometimes I forget and I don't always follow it. The best way, a lot of people, when you go blah, 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 and give them all that information, they switch off. You've got to ask questions. Ask probing questions which will lead them in a certain way, as well as in the debates when I'm out on the street. I can tell when I'm up against somebody that knows how to debate because they don't answer questions and they ask them themselves. So it can become a little bit of a battle of each person just asking a question. But if you genuinely want to impart knowledge, you can give a little, don't give too much, and then listen to what that person says and then ask them questions about it. And that's the best, I think that's the best tactic.
Yeah, I see you, as I say, the way you handle people, I think I've watched your journey grow, and like anything, you get better at doing it. But I also think the way you go about, you're not trying to, I'm clever and you, and you're going, come on, let's go on a journey together here, because I might be wrong. And if I'm wrong, I'm happy to find out. I don't think I am, but I might be. And again, when you go into the detail, you go into, it's not only that, not just the person you're talking to, you see the people who congregate around it, and obviously the millions who watch online. Yeah. For me, that's, you're teaching. One of the best feelings when I'm out on the street is when the crowd gathers and I see people debating between themselves. I can just sit back. A lot of the time it's operation let them speak, and just let them speak, I'll hold the microphone there and I'll just let them talk, and then they'll either, if they're against it, they usually expose themselves. You don't have to say much. You're showing people around the world what's actually taking place on the battlefield, on the streets. That's where people have got to move about. Yeah,
and as I said, we're doing the job of the mainstream media now. And as we said earlier, the plug could get pulled at any time. If the social media, say YouTube, community guideline policy changes, then, we could lose it. So maybe I
wouldn't put anything past this government. Certainly don't even know who's going to come after that. I mean, hopefully not Farage, but we never know. What kind of feedback has surprised you the most, good or bad?
What feedback? What surprised me the most was that how much this ideology that has come in under the radar has got its claws into some people. So I guess that's not feedback, but that's what surprised me more than anything, that there were so many people that are fully indoctrinated, and they're almost like they will fight it to the death.
But that doesn't, see, I'm surprised that surprises you. When you look at, any iteration of cult, whatever that, people go to the football game and are prepared to die and stab people for the team. In Italy, it's gone a little bit out of the game now in England in terms of football hooliganism, or But we've seen that. You've seen people do that for, you know, all manner of different things that, you know, whether it's religious based, where they just walk into a building and blow themselves up, or, you know, kill a couple of people in, you know, some kind of massacre that, because, you know, we've seen it in Miami, didn't we? Someone went into a gay nightclub or something and shot all the nightclub up. You know, we've seen, you know, some of the madness that's gone on in and around the UK as well. And when you look at that, you see that crazy. You must think there's also no way to talk to crazy, is there? Because once you've fucking gone, you know, I hate to pick on the Mormons, but when you watch that Joseph's, the Book of Mormon or whatever,
I've seen that.
You know, and the great thing about the Mormons is you've got none of the Mormons trying to suicide bomb people watching that thing and laughing at, you know, the absurdity of some of the claims in that Man in the Sky book. But then, you know, you run that comedy about another man in the sky, and next minute, you know, you've got Charlie Hebdo and all other kind of crazed madness. But you've been outspoken on like issues like gender and free speech and stuff like that. But like, where does that come from? Is that something that you've believed your whole life, or is it the social injustice of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Without free speech, you know, you get tyranny.
But do you really believe we have free speech in the UK?
No. There's the idea that we've got free speech, but we saw it. What they've done is they brought in kind of hate speech. So, and who can determine what's hate and what isn't? What isn't?
I'm under that harassment, alarm, and distress.
So that's the law, isn't it? And I'm thinking I've not been stopped from doing what I'm doing. When I was down in Islington in London, the police were called on me, and they said, you know, some people have called us because of the concerns of what's on your boards. I think 5 police turned up outside Islington tube station.
A burglary would be a bit slower to respond.
And they said it could be what the law says is that if you say something or you display a sign which causes someone harassment, alarm, and distress, you can be guilty of a public order, Section 5. But this is the crucial thing. The harassment, alarm, and distress has to follow from something you say or display that is threatening or abusive. That's the key thing. And I say, so what is threatening or abusive? And what's on my signs? It says there's no such thing as a transgender child. And the one on the back says keep men out of women's sports. What's threatening about that?
Yeah. I mean, I've seen there's a guy who's out there preaching from the Bible on the microphone. He does a similar thing. I can't remember his name. And whenever the police run into him and they get quite heavy-handed with him, he's like, look, I am literally, everything I say is out the Bible. Yeah. And then, you know, the snookered really, because, you know, where did they go? And again, with you, that the common sense things that I think any rational person would struggle to say, that is hateful.
Yeah, I've got a few other signs. I've got one other that says.
No, I know you flipped them. I meant to ask you that. What did they say?
You show me?
Yeah, because I've always thought is one like Diet Coke and then you go to full fat.
Well, that's no such thing as a transgender child. That says keep men out of women's sports. These are pretty mild. This one is gender ideology does not belong in schools, which is quite mild. Yeah. And the other one, I wish I'd have. It was trans women are biological men. But I've crossed biological out because that's using their language. You're either a man or you're not.
Yeah, but it's worth leaving there for ideological.
I've got a few more at home. One of them was what Kelly Jean says, and it's something like something about I can't even remember. Something about non-binary is just a made-up thing. But I did another one. It was a play on the old first they came for the socialists, then they came for the Jews. And it was first they came with the pronouns, then they came with puberty blockers, then they came with cross-sex hormones, and then they came with a scalpel. So I've not actually been out with that one yet. And I think the writing's a bit too small because I've got so much on there. I probably will do one day.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the evolution. What's one thing about you that your audience wouldn't necessarily know, like something, a hobby or?
Well, I've talked about my hobbies of Brazilian Jiu-jitsu and CrossFit, but I ride an electric unicycle.
Okay.
There's kind of like a real cult community. It's just a real fanatical following. Electric unicycles are a little bit like, do you know the Segways where you can lean forward and back? You have two wheels and you have like a handle. Well, this is just one wheel, and you've got foot plates either side, and you just stand on it and away you go. You lean forward to go forward, lean back to go back. So
it's a bit of a dangerous sport that for me, mate. Yeah,
it is. I mean, like I say, I'm 54 now, and you know, it should be teenagers or early 20s.
An adrenaline junkie then?
Yeah. Because I mean, I do pad up and everything now. The electric unicycle I've got goes like 45 miles an hour. It's nuts. I used to race motorbikes, you know, in my youth, and I don't do that anymore. But this gives me the same kind of thrill as like racing motorbikes. But
sounds like someone's trying to drill through our wall here. It's gone now. But
the thing is, it's actually illegal to ride them on the roads. You know, you can only use them on private land. Okay. But the police generally, I've spoken to my police mates at Jiu-Jitsu, and they said as long as you're respectful. Greater Manchester Police aren't really that interested in that kind of thing. So I do ride up. I like to go with my wife on Blackpool seafront in the morning and go all the way from the furthest place is Fleetwood, and the other end is St Anne's. So we can go from St Anne's to Fleetwood. If we park our motorhome up at Blackpool, St Anne's, and then fly up and down the promenade when there's nobody there. It's brilliant.
Well, unless you get bad weather, because it doesn't have to come in there on that side.
So that's good fun.
Last ones from me. How I get this a lot because people always ask me, how did the people closest to you feel about your views?
I keep it away from my parents now. I don't let them see it. My mum and dad said, I'm terribly worried about what you're doing. I used to post links to my YouTube channel on my Facebook account, and then I lost that Facebook account. It got taken away from me. Must have been a naughty boy or something.
Well, Zuckerberg got caught up in it, didn't he? He's now reversed.
So I've got a new Facebook account, which I'm going to start to put it on. So I keep it away from my parents. I had a bit of a fallout with some members of my family during the COVID era because we both had different ideas on things, and those wounds are still open to a degree. Hopefully we can heal them in the not too distant future. So I don't really see them that much. Now, when it comes to the closest person to me, my wife, Sue, she won't come out with me because she wouldn't be able to keep as calm as me. She's a little terrier when she wants to be, you know. I'm 5'5", she's 5 foot, you know, little 5 foot. She was a British and world powerlifting champion.
So were you, and didn't you have a good go?
Yeah, I was a British powerlifting champion as well, and I was going to enter the World Powerlifting Union World Championships as well. But I'd had a tattoo on my leg and it was coloured in red, and I had a reaction to the ink and it all got infected. So I'd been training really hard as well. And I had this, even it was a month or two before, but it took a long time to heal. So I couldn't enter the powerlifting championships. But it was contested in Ireland. So I went over with Sue, my wife, and she got the world records for that. So she got the current the holder at the time was a Russian lady, and Sue beat her. So it's done in age and weight categories. And of course, Sue's only 5 foot and she weighed 48 kilos, but she could lift, you know, what was she deadlifting? She weighed 48 kilos and I think she deadlifted 112 kilos, which is more than some men. She bench pressed, I think, about 47.5 kilos. And a back squat, I can't remember. Sorry, Sue. I can't remember what she could.
That was incredible anyway.
But yes,
she's a little powerhouse. Sports, like the park runs and that, they've all been, all the records for women's sports have been
smashed by men.
Distorted by, men who were saying the women. So that I've seen the big, I've seen Maria, I want to say Yamaguchi is her name, the runner. She was a famous middle distance runner. She's been like Sharon Davis, I've been in the swimming pool, and Riley Gaines, Maria's been on about the park run records and what's gone on there. So there is a lot of people who are fighting for women's rights, legitimately, not the ones who are fighting for women's rights for, that you've seen on the streets of Manchester a couple of weeks ago. If you could leave your audience with one message for the next 10 years, what would it be?
Wow, put me on the spot here now. If we keep it to this ideology, but we could actually spread it even further than that. We need to stand up against this, because the people that are pushing this ideology, they even said it to me in Liverpool on Friday. One guy said, in 10 to 15 years, your way of thinking, your mindset will be so old-fashioned and so banished to history, because we'll be entering this new world. The world's changing, but if you believe in the values that you've been brought up with and you don't want it to change, you need to stand up and be counted for it. There's other things as well. They do want this one world government. We talked earlier about this new crime and policing bill, where your Englishman's home is your castle. They're trying to bring in a bill now, and it's in its second reading in the House of Lords, where the police can enter your property without a warrant. And it says to search for stolen goods or suspected stolen goods. Yeah. And then it gives an example, such as a mobile phone which has been located through GPS technology. So you see what they do with the language. They'll say, oh, well, it's only if they've got a mobile phone in our house which has been located. No, that's just a such as. If you read the first part of that bill, it says, if they suspect you've got you've got stolen goods in your house. So that's just a green light for the police or for the government to be able to get beyond your front door without a warrant. So people...
And we've seen how the police will politicise and put certain pressure on other people. I've had it. When I tweeted about Imran Khalifa winning a medal, 3 lesbian police officers and a finger arrested me in front of me children. I was babysitting. Yeah, I was on my own babysitting. My wife had gone for dinner in Manchester, and I had 3 of my 4 children. I'd just been playing in the back garden with a mate. He brought his kids round. He'd just gone. Literally within 10 minutes, I got this knock at the door, and I've had a couple. And it's a police knock. I thought, has he forgot someone coming back? And anyway, when I went, it was 3 young, looked quite lesbianish police women. And I said, you're here to arrest me, aren't you? And they said, yeah. I said, well, my wife's out and I'm babysitting on my own. There's no other adults here. And I've got a 2-year-old, a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old. But as I've entered it to them, I've brought them in the house. I've put them in the living room. I said, they're eating the food. It was dinner time, 6 o'clock, 6:30. Went round the back, and one of the police had jumped over my back fence and went round the back. And obviously the kids were crying because we've got a kind of bifold door.
Right.
And this was all about pressure. Don't want you to speak out. Stop. And I'm going, what am I actually saying that you don't like? Like that we should have a meritocracy? That we should use common sense? That, are they that outlandish, the things that we're saying? Like, what your board say? Are they that out there that people need to attack these positions? Can you not sit and debate and discuss with us and show us why we're wrong or how it's...
I've just thought something else along that because I mean, they are using the police, to try and stifle that free speech, like you said. And I said there's a control agenda. Now, what people might not be aware of is that they're trying to introduce new digital currencies, and they're trying to introduce a digital ID card. Now, this digital currency will be different than normal money. Like digital money, we pay online with things and stuff and you never see cash. Well, this new digital money is central bank issued money, and it has the potential to be programmable. If they can control what you spend your money on, okay, then you literally you don't lose your freedom of speech, you lose your whole freedom. So they could geofence it, which means you can only spend it within a certain radius. So remember the lockdowns and you couldn't go to certain areas. They'll say, right, your digital currencies will only work within this radius of where you live. So you're trapped to that area and there'll be no cash alternative.
So this, I've seen people talking about these 15-minute cities and stuff like that.
That's pretty much what we're talking about, these 15-minute neighborhoods, these 15-minute cities. This is going to be linked to your digital ID card and your carbon credit score. So this idea of man-made climate change, what they're doing is putting a carbon score on everything, and you will be given your carbon limit. So maybe you can only eat so much meat.
Yeah.
You know, and if they'll know how much you're having because...
So it's a rationing system in essence.
It is, yeah. If they wanted to boost the economy, they could put a time limit on your spending. They could say that you're only allowed to spend in certain places. You know, when you think about the potential of this digital currency, if they get it in, linked to your carbon credit score, it's a totalitarian system.
Yeah, and energy for me, I mean, our management of energy in this country says we're not going to be at the forefront of the AI race. It looks like we've already lost that to America, and it looks like China are way down the track with that. What genie that is when that gets out the bottle, what that does with or sees in us, a hierarchical chimpanzee that is nuclear capable, I'm not sure. I would imagine if it's as clever as it's meant to be, it'll realise we're a fucking nuisance.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the billionaires that are pushing the transgender issue is somebody called Martin Rothblatt. Used to be Martin Rothblatt, and he has wrote a book From Transgender to Transhumanism. All right, and he talks about downloading all your thoughts and your consciousness onto servers, onto AI servers, and then you won't need your body anymore. You can live forever as whatever avatar you wish.
Well, this anyone who comes apart from Noel Gallagher and Liam Gallagher singing "You'll Live Forever" has me back right up. But because that is the ultimate sign of, for me, narcissism. If you want to be the first pet, why would you want to live forever?
No,
why? Like it scares you that these people are out there with this kind of mindset, and as I say, these cults. When you're speaking there about downloading your mind onto a server, I'm like, it sounded really Scientology. Yeah. You go and have an audit or whatever they are, and we've seen some of the complications of these man in the sky. Read this book, believe this way. There is no other alternative. Now, if they shut down free debate and discussion, and Islamophobic is the recent one that they're trying to get a bit of a handle on, then we're absolutely up shit creek without a paddle. Because if we cannot challenge these ideologies, these cults, then we're going to end up with them having the numbers in the end and us being in a real predicament.
Yeah, of course. And if you just, what I'd say to people as well, tune out of the mainstream media, get rid of your TV license, look for alternative sources of news. A great source, if you want to beat the digital censorship, I don't know if you know about this, there's the Light newspaper. Have you come across that, Joey?
No, not heard of it. No.
The Light newspaper is a way of getting around the digital censorship. It talks about a lot of the issues that we've been talking about today. It's funded by the people. It's free. They are online as well. You can get back copies. Can I give a bit of a plug to it?
Yeah, absolutely. Get in there, yeah.
So go to the lightpaper.co.uk. All the back issues are on there. It was started right in the dark days of the COVID era when everybody was locked down, and they started to print this paper, and people were like surreptitiously delivering them at night through people's letterboxes, saying that things might not be quite as you're being told on the TV. So check them out. The Light paper is really a really good source of information.
Brilliant. And just before we wrap up, obviously, Steve, you can find Steve on YouTube, Edge of the Matrix.
Yeah.
And obviously all the other socials.
X and TikTok.
Well, listen, mate, I've really enjoyed that. I could speak to you for hours. Hopefully at some point you'll come back and let us know how you're getting on the journey. But from our end, keep up the good work, keep up the good fight, keep educating people out there and sparking, debate and conversation and getting people talking. I think that's the key, especially as the nanny state that we live in starts to get more and more draconian and tries to shut down more and more debate and discussion. I think it's important, whilst we all can, that we do get together and champion each other. And I think you're a brilliant man, and what you're doing is absolutely fantastic, mate. So keep up the good fight.
Thank you for having me on, Joey. I'm not stopping anytime soon.
No, good man.
I'm not stopping anytime soon.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Cheers, mate. Thanks a lot.